The man casually fashioned a sword sheath, which sent the entire group of hunters in the trial room into shock. Even Yun-ha, one of the strongest now, immediately wanted to rush forward and snatch it. The sight left all the judges unable to believe their eyes, because the blade he made radiated an incredibly terrifying aura. After the system appraised it, this fire-attributed sheath reached a super-rare grade that could both store and amplify magical power many times over. No one understood how a contestant could possess such fearsome smithing skill, but they didn't know that in his past life, this man had been the strongest blacksmith, who forged countless god-tier weapons for heroes, and later joined them in killing 6 destructive demon gods. Yet even with humanity's victory, they could not survive, because among those 6 destructive demon gods, there was one called the Sea of Destruction. Though he was dead, most of the land was still swallowed by the sea of death he left behind. Thinking of that, Si-hoon couldn't help but scoff at himself. I barely survived, only to end up dying in this damn sea. The surviving heroes also fell one by one. Even the hero towers defending the land collapsed. This cursed sea didn't disappear even though the demon god was killed. Just then a man behind him cut in. Are you really planning to perform a one-man show here? Seong-ha stepped in front of Si-hoon and frowned at his bedraggled appearance. Anyone would think he carried the weight of the world. The mad dog Yom Seong-ha. Hearing that, Louise turned and shot a provocative remark back. This guy who just collapsed pretending to be sick now wants to act heroic. The wild dog Louise Valen. Meanwhile, Amir clutched his head and complained, I told you so, didn't I? Big Brother was just enjoying himself after taking command of the Legion. The pack dog Amir Singh. After a moment of silence while the others took turns criticizing, Si-hoon coldly ordered, Stop the nonsense. You would already be dead if not for the gear I made, final blacksmith Lee Si-hoon. No sooner had he spoken than Seong-ha flew into a rage. What did you say? Louise beside him commented, this guy really has an ugly mouth, and Amir reminded him, Big Brother, that's a bit harsh. Then he swore, making the atmosphere suddenly heavy and suffocating. Shut up, you brats. If you don't like using them, give all the equipment back to me. In that moment, one thought remained in Si-hoon's mind. The 3 standing before me are the 3 dogs. They don't side with humanity, nor do they belong to those damned demon tribes. They act only according to what they like. They always put personal gain above all else. They are opportunists who stay out of the war to profit. Though utterly selfish bastards, they survived to this moment and in the end proved to be the most active actors. Thinking this, Si-hoon vaguely wondered whether things would have turned out better if they'd acted sooner. Once more his gaze was pierced by the sun at the edge of the sea. Si-hoon calmly sat back down on the ground and glanced behind him. Is there anyone left standing? Hearing this, Yom Seong-ha doubled over, clutching his stomach, and let out a dry sound. I'm at my limit. My internal organs are already crushed. Louise looked up into the air and spoke slowly. The situation here isn't any better. It seems we're cursed. The blood just won't stop flowing. Amir kept whining over here that his heart's been pierced and he's probably done for. Seeing that, Si-hoon sighed helplessly. See, you should have worked together from the start. Even as they were dying, he still coldly cursed them instead of selfishly only worrying about himself. You 3 damned dogs. Suddenly a loud noise rang out, drawing Si-hoon's attention. He saw Yom Seong-ha's group, and Amir had collapsed. At the sight of that, he stood up calmly, murmuring a sigh, still making trouble up to the last moment. Then Si-hoon stepped forward and gently took hold of the hammer. Si-hoon lifted the object into his gaze fixed on the piece of metal below. After a moment, he carefully drove blades into the ground beside Amir's body. Si-hoon's voice was hoarse with anger. Learn to value your gear a bit. It's ruined like this, how can you use it? He thought to himself that at least this pile could serve as their tombstone. When he finished, Si-hoon looked up at the endless sky, standing silent in the wailing sea wind, bitterly amused. Now it's my turn, is it? Si-hoon's blood-cracked hand rose slowly. His expression was calm to the point of coldness. This will be the last time I do this. Immediately, he struck hard at the center of his chest. The space trembled, and lines of lighted script hovered before Si-hoon as an emotionless voice echoed in his head. Extracting the bond from target Lee Si-hoon. The bond level with creator Lee Si-hoon reached an unheard-of negative tier. A crystal appeared in his hand. A pale blue light glowed around the ore-like block, as the code system explained the unique skill. A linked blacksmith can extract special ore from a target with a connection. The ore's effects depend on the relationship and potential of the subject. Si-hoon stared at the crystal, thinking that if he used it on himself, it would be worse than a lump of ordinary iron. Colorless ore, an extracted linked ore from Si-hoon, utterly hollow. If only he'd awakened this ability a bit earlier. He stared at the pale ore in his hand, nails digging in, whispering like a prayer to the darkness. If there's nothing inside, then swallow the regret that's tormenting me. Then Si-hoon suddenly raised the hammer high, as a distant thunderous sound reverberated. He looked up at the churning Black Sea. Was that sound the sea of death or the waves he'd heard all along? One thing he was sure of, whenever that sound rang in his ears, in that instant Si-hoon crazily brought the hammer down on the object. A bold thought struck him. A masterpiece beyond imagination would always be born. At the final moment the hammer fell, and a column of light shot abruptly into the sky. He raised the blade high and said in a low, resolute voice, "Until the end and still no special ability appears." Saying that, Si-hoon couldn't help mocking himself. He'd expected something good to emerge, even if it was a linking stone of his own. Staring at the colorless metal in his hand, he muttered inwardly that it was monotonous to the point of boredom. Instead, he would end this life with his own hands. At that moment, Si-hoon's facial muscles suddenly stiffened, and his eyes rolled back. Then he burst into a warped laugh that echoed over the Dead Sea, both mad and tragic. "I'm truly a lunatic to think the only thing I'd do until the end was swing the forging hammer." In that instant, Si-hoon's mind sank into a tangle of thoughts, and when he cast aside the last sword, he realized a truth: the sound of the waves that had often appeared since I awakened my magic. All this time, I kept wondering what that noise meant. It turned out to be the presence of the Sea of Destruction. His eyes closed, regret weighing on him like a boulder. His lips moved in remorse. If only I had understood sooner, or if I had convinced those 3 dogs earlier. Then Si-hoon denied it. No, if I had forged for others even a little earlier, perhaps things could have turned out differently. The space around Si-hoon suddenly twisted, and a massive image of ancient apparatus appeared. An announcement voice echoed. "The spiritual image of the apparatus has manifested. The primal regression image trap skill is activating." Amid the blinding light, an unfamiliar voice spoke calmly. "Welcome, contestant." He snapped his eyes open. Breathing hard, his heart couldn't help but feel a bit panicked. "What, I'm not dead yet?" Across from him, Assistant Ha stared in bewilderment. "Contestant Lee Si-hoon, what are you doing there?" Hearing that, Lee Si-hoon shivered briefly. "Contestant, it's been 31 years since I last heard that word." Then suddenly he shouted, "How can you stand there dazed in the middle of the entrance exam?" As soon as he finished speaking, he stared wide-eyed. "What?" Si-hoon rolled his eyes around the exam hall. Could this be about something from 31 years ago? Could this be a past Babel? Are these memories surfacing just before I closed my eyes? His gaze flashed in shock as he recalled the final moment. Wait. The image trap phenomenon that manifested was what I saw right before I died. The air around Si-hoon seemed to freeze, breathing ragged regression to the starting point. Could that really stem from the weapon made of his linking stone? Assistant Ha said sternly, "This is a final warning for you, contestant Lee Si-hoon." He continued, "If you don't perform properly right now, I'll eject you from here." Hearing that, he instinctively nodded yes. Si-hoon stared at the hammer below. So that's what regression meant. His hand clenched in the air as if gripping an invisible hammer handle. If I had recognized the gift sooner and started swinging the forging hammer earlier, could I have changed everything? Si-hoon violently rejected that thought. No, that's not the most important thing. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat steadied. His body felt reborn in that moment of awakening. He stared at his palm. There was only one thing that truly mattered now, and he had to accomplish it. Thinking that, Si-hoon's mouth curled up. He straightened in the room, eyes blazing like a forge rekindling its first flame. A low but resonant voice echoed in his mind. "You must protect everything." Si-hoon's mouth twisted into a smile again, determination in his heart. "In this life I'll pass the Babel exam." He gently raised the hammer high. His eyes lit with thought. Confronting those 3 dogs is only the beginning. Then suddenly a small flame flared. Inchial shivered slightly and leaned toward Si-hoon's forge. Surprise lit his eyes. That contestant. They only saw Si-hoon frantically hammering down on the metal. Inchial immediately stepped closer, his gaze fixed on Si-hoon's hands. Astonishingly, it looked slow, but the rhythm was perfectly in tune with a clear, pure resonance. He carefully followed the metal piece in Si-hoon's hands with his eyes, unable to help exclaiming that this was top-tier forging skill. At that moment, Anon stood motionless, his eyes never leaving him. He swallowed dryly, eyes fixed on the iron bar gradually taking shape. What level of perfection is this? At the same time, Assistant Ha's eyes widened in shock. Did he really make that? Seeing that, Anon smirked contemptuously. A prodigy applicant. If he turned that in as is, he'd pass immediately. Just then Si-hoon slammed the hammer down on the metal piece. The loud bang drew everyone's attention. Then suddenly the metal shattered into fragments. Assistant Ha nearly froze on the spot. Over here, Inchial was astonished, eyes wide. After a brief silence, his mouth twitched. "Though I still have a long way to go, parading such trash." He stopped the hammer midair, his gaze turning cold. That's something I absolutely cannot tolerate as a smith. Witnessing that, Assistant Ha screamed frantically. You just destroyed a weapon in front of the professor. Do you think forging is a joke? Si-hoon called out calmly. Examiner. Before Inchial's baffled look, he casually made a request. I want to retake the exam. Then he yelled again. Hey, contestant, he suddenly cut in Assistant Ha. Inchial folded his arms and ordered curtly but decisively. Bring him the remaining materials. Assistant Ha, surprised, stammered. What, sir? He raised an eyebrow and gave Si-hoon a cold look. He didn't actually violate the rules, did he? Or do you want me to fetch them myself? Not daring to object, Assistant Ha hurriedly replied. I'll bring the materials right away. Inchial approached the forge and looked Si-hoon in the eye, his voice warm but commanding. Young man, he warned sternly. Do you know there are only 40 minutes left in the exam? Si-hoon only nodded, yes. Inchial stared at the shards and asked curiously, do you think breaking it was the right decision? Hearing that, Si-hoon's eyes darted to the destroyed metal blocks. Finally, he turned to Inchial with unwavering resolve. I can't submit something like that. Over here, Inchial tilted his head, his gaze thoughtful, then slowly said, very well, do your best. After a moment, Si-hoon's eyes once more flared with determination. He took a deep breath, feeling this young but frail body, and told himself tensely, with this body, perfect forging would indeed be difficult. Thinking that, Si-hoon frowned. Mana, strength, and time were all running out. So the best choice in this situation is... Suddenly a sharp sizzle rang out from the forge. A few contestants startled and turned. What's that sound? One panicked shouted, is that bastard pumping mana into the tinder? Someone lunged forward half a step and barked. Hey, what are you doing? If those stones catch fire, they'll explode, hurry in. Meanwhile, Si-hoon calmly reached out and ignited the flame. The room fell silent as a five-colored fire flared wildly without exploding. Someone exclaimed, huh, no way, this madman. At that moment, an invisible stream of mana suddenly lunged straight at him. Faced with the terrifying sight, several people panicked and shouted, it's burning. Bring the fire extinguisher, quick. Assistant Ha trembled and pleaded, Professor, please tell him to stop. Inchial replied dismissively, let him do it. Don't react like that, not even you contestants. Saying this, he seriously signaled, observe the flow of the flame closely. Si-hoon couldn't help feeling a bit unsettled, strange. Right before Si-hoon was the five-colored fire spirit, a high-temperature flame amplified by the resonance of 5 types of tinder. He curled his lips in a smile, eyes fixed on the flame, requiring extremely precise mana control. But this is an excellent technique, one that can even be used when mana is at a minimum. A contestant stammered in disbelief. What, it didn't explode? Another hesitated. Wait, could that be? Someone pointed at the iron ingot in the forge and shouted in amazement. The color of the ingot has changed, and seeing that, Inchial quickly understood. So that's it. He resonated the tinder stones to boost the firepower and alter the ingot's properties. He looked at Si-hoon with concern. This would significantly shorten the time needed for forging. However, with only 30 minutes left, time was still tight. Thinking that, Inchial silently affirmed that the forging section he'd just done was excellent too. But if that's all, then he wouldn't finish in time. Sharp metal shards flew into the air. Seeing this, he smirked contemptuously, a rare light flashing in his eyes. Then Si-hoon clenched the mass with his bare hands and slowly fed it into the forge. Si-hoon could be seen exhaling each breath with difficulty. After a while, he resumed hammering the metal forcefully. Suddenly, Si-hoon's arm stopped midway in the air. Seeing that, he gritted his teeth as he felt his mana drained. He muttered, damn, I'm out of mana and the protective layer's broken. Damn this frail body. I need to start training the moment this exam ends. Yet somehow Si-hoon's palm was bleeding, fresh blood slowly spreading across his hand. In that moment, he had only one thought. I cannot waste a single second. Immediately after, Si-hoon once again hammered like a madman, silently deciding to push his body to the limit. At that time, Inchial's voice rang out. 10 minutes, 3 minutes in the final minute. He bellowed, his voice shaking the space. 1 minute. No sooner had the sound ended than Si-hoon immediately raised the sword in his hand. Inchial shouted once more. Stop. He heard that and slightly parted his lips as he exhaled. At that moment, Si-hoon clenched his hand beneath the table, fresh blood continuing to flow. Simultaneously, the system's bright screen flashed. Complete, the 5-colored flame sword had been finished. You have acquired Artisan Flame Skill C. The announcement continued in midair. The assessment result for the 5-colored flame sword was high, quality rank, high upper mid. A curved sword engraved with 5 flames appeared. The flames compressed in the blade react to mana to produce brilliant colors. This item reveals the potential of its smith. The sword's color and properties may vary slightly depending on the nature of the mana infused. Someone repeated in a trembling voice, the weapon's rank is high. Si-hoon added, Please check the detailed description in the info window. Everyone can see this as a passing result. Assistant Ha burst out excitedly, his voice nearly shouting as the air erupted. Passed. Inchial waved his hand to signal silence. Quiet, you brat. He immediately lowered his voice. Sorry, sir. The scene shifted to a room. It was Professor Kim Inchial's office. Inside, he anxiously glanced back over his shoulder. Sihun sat upright before the desk and asked with unwavering eyes, "Is this a sword worthy to submit this time?" Inchial was silent for a moment, then answered for now, yes. He exhaled, "You still don't seem very satisfied, Lee Sihun. I'll be blunt." Inchial spoke in a heavy tone, as if carrying the weight of the times. "This place won't meet your standards." He emphasized each word. "You'd be better off withdrawing your application." Inchial continued in a low voice. "Babel's reputation may be overwhelming, but the metallurgy department hasn't produced any notable achievements lately." On this side, Sihun remained silent. He narrowed his eyes at him. "It's a truth I'm well aware of. Babel's metallurgy department will close in 8 years due to declining standards. In the future, the Vulcan Academy will become the world's top academy for training smiths." After a moment's hesitation, Inchial tentatively suggested, "Perhaps Vulcan will be the best place in the future." Hearing that, Sihun interjected, "You're mistaken, Professor. The best place won't be Vulcan." He pointed confidently at himself. "It will be Babel, the school I'm about to enroll in." At that, Inchial flinched slightly. His gaze wavered noticeably. Inchial stared at Sihun with a mix of suspicion and clear astonishment. Inchial squinted, his sharp gaze probing, his slow, challenging voice. "In that case, you must first become the department's valedictorian. Are you confident?" He answered without hesitation, "Of course. At least at the student level, no one will surpass me." No sooner had he finished than Inchial's expression changed. He asked sternly, "Do you know the selection process for the department valedictorian at Babel?" Given the question, Sihun quickly recited the information like a machine. They select a candidate for department valedictorian via an additional exam between the 2 top students. And from those candidates, the valedictorian is determined. That's what I know. The Babel Academy broadly divides its students into 3 departments. Combat Department Akarquif, Support Department Technology Department Borsipa. Within each department, dozens of majors intertwine like root systems. Becoming the department valedictorian means receiving the highest evaluation among countless majors and being recognized by all of Babel as a top talent. Returning to reality, Inchial showed visible tension. His arms clenched until they trembled. Inchial turned to Sihun, his voice lowering sincerely. "I'll say it again, not as a professor, but as a senior smith." He continued in a weary tone. "Even if you become the department valedictorian, it's hard to expect success here as a smith. Go to the Vulcan Academy." Inchial nodded slightly as if deciding for him. "That's the path for you." Sihun looked at the man before him with rare respect, thinking inwardly to place his protege's future above his own. He truly is a decent man. After a brief silence, Sihun reaffirmed, "The environment isn't important, as I just said." His eyes brightened and his voice rang out enthusiastically. "Babel, the school I'm about to enroll in, will soon become the best." Inchial was momentarily startled. He'll become the best there. In the end, a corner of his mouth lifted in interest. Inchial couldn't help but laugh and reached out toward Sihun. It was a statement beyond arrogance, yet for some reason I didn't dislike it. He reached out, looking at him sincerely. "I very much look forward to working with you." Seeing that, Sihun didn't hesitate and squeezed Inchial's hand, gripping it firmly. The corner of his mouth lifted. "Same here." Sparkling text appeared before him. A link to target Kim Inchial has been established. The creator link Sihun is currently level 1 and is extracting a link from target Kim Inchial. Sihun tightened his arm. An object floated in the center of his palm. A lump of metal appeared, a smoldering fire burning inside as the system described. Iron link with fire. Rank, high quality, upper mid, a metal that possesses fire. It has wood-like properties and can store fire within. At Sihun's home, he stared blankly at the burning object in his hand. Sihun turned the small metal in his hand. "Not bad. But is this all the size it is?" He pressed his lips together while analyzing. Link extraction quantifies the relationship with a specific target to derive types of ore that did not previously exist. Sihun stared at the metal, his expression darkening. "The problem is the link level is low, making it hard to utilize now." Looking at the stats before him, he gave a bitter smile. Compared to Babel's new students, his stats were pitiful. Sihun raised his head and sighed helplessly. "Unfortunate. But if it's the price for returning to the past, it's still cheap." He murmured inwardly to force himself calm. "Right, don't rush." A murderous glint flashed in Sihun's eyes at the thought of the future. Wanting more would be simple greed. There's still time to crush those demonic bastards. The demonic world monsters threaten not just humanity, but the entire planet. The 6 great demon gods, causing humanity's annihilation, was entirely their plan. Si-hoon stared into the void, thinking that to stop them he couldn't be picky about means or methods. He must not be thrown off by major future events. So first he needs weapons or skills tied to his memories. He nodded slightly as if confirming to himself. The first step of the plan to enroll in Babel is settled. Then at that moment, a flash of light drew Si-hoon's attention. His eyes opened wide in evident surprise. The system announced solemnly. User Si-hoon's link level has reached level 1. A link imprint skill has been added. 1 week later at Babel Academy. Babel Academy emerged under the morning sun. At the same time, in a corridor within the academy, Si-hoon exhaled in frustration. Damn it, I'm lost again, this is the right place, right? He looked around the wide corridor and stopped when he saw the familiar sign. Here it is. Upon entering, Si-hoon cautiously greeted good morning when someone suddenly cut in. Student Lee Si-hoon. After a moment of bewilderment, he froze in astonishment. Michael tapped the table slowly and sneered. You look pretty relaxed, don't you? Michael raised an eyebrow and glanced toward the crowded waiting room. Don't you see everyone is waiting? Michael Barmut, deputy director of Borsapa. Hearing that, Inchial couldn't help but speak up. Vice principal, there are still 10 minutes before the supplemental exam begins. The man cut him off immediately. It's not a question of time, but of attitude. Michael's voice lowered. I'll have to warn him about this. Si-hoon was briefly awkward. He sighed inwardly. It's not just the metallurgy department that's in bad shape, he's also clashing with his superiors. Si-hoon's gaze shifted to Inchial. Now I understand why he recommended another student. As he continued to glance around, Hans turned to look with unabashed anger. His eyes stopped on Si-hoon and scanned him from head to toe. Seeing that, Si-hoon froze for a moment and his arm dropped unconsciously. After a brief hesitation, Si-hoon slowly spoke. Very pleased to meet you, responding to Hans's scornful attitude. He forced a smile. What is this brat's act? It's been a long time since I've been treated like this. How boring, truly unbelievable. At that moment a voice rang out, drawing everyone's attention. Have you all gathered? Immediately after, a figure appeared in the dazzling sunlight. Seeing that, Si-hoon and Hans both turned around. Over here, Michael exhaled. We've been wondering when you'd arrive, headmaster. At the same time, Si-hoon's eyes widened as he saw the other person. The one was. Yunha immediately sat down, eye to eye with Si-hoon. She stared at him with a cold gaze and spoke in a low voice. Sorry for being late. Ryu Yunha, head of Borsapa at Babel. At the sight of her, Si-hoon couldn't help but feel unsettled. Why is this woman here? The moment he saw Yunha, Si-hoon fell silent. His gaze darkened as if looking at a distant memory. We'd heard rumors that she used to work at Babel, thinking that made him even more uneasy. It's unexpected that she would now occupy the headmaster's seat. S-class hero who devours weapons. Ryu Yunha, a superhuman with a unique ability to increase strength by absorbing armaments. Before I reverse time, she had merely been a regular customer who frequently visited my shop. After a long time, Yunha appeared in a shabby condition. Her voice softened, her eyes curved as if smiling but hiding an inscrutable remorse. I truly regret having eaten your weapon. Meanwhile, Si-hoon stood motionless. He did not respond to Yunha. Then silence fell over the space. She hung her head. On this side, Si-hoon wore an angry expression. Teeth clenched so hard his body trembled. In the end, he could only helplessly lower his head. Back in the present, a short but firm call pulled him out of his thoughts. Hoon, Si-hoon. Si-hoon snapped back to attention and quickly replied. Yes. Inchial's voice was steady as he scanned the candidates. We will begin by explaining the exam content. Everyone, focus. He emphasized each word with a gruff tone. You will have a total of 90 minutes to complete this test. Inchial paused, then continued. During those 90 minutes, your task is to forge a piece of equipment that can harmonize with the sword from the previous exam. Inchial suddenly paused for a few seconds, creating a heavy silence. However, his voice grew colder, each word ringing like a command. You are only permitted to use alchemical forging techniques to craft it. Inchial tilted his head toward the gleaming ore racks regarding materials. You are free to choose any ore available here. Inchial's voice deepened. His gaze swept the two examiners with respect. The finished works will be judged personally by Headmaster Yunha and Vice Principal Michael, so put your heart into creating something you can be proud of. Then he decisively lowered his hand. His voice rang like a bell opening the ceremony. All right. Standing before the two were Si-hoon and Hans. Inchial shouted once. The official exam begins. After a moment, Si-hoon softly murmured under his breath. Only alchemical forging. Si-hoon pressed his lips for a moment, eyes fixed on the pile of materials. He needs to create resonance with pure magic to prevent the primal spirit power from erupting. Hans snorted. Does he think staring at that ore pile will raise his mana? Sihun looked up slowly, his gaze cooling. Did I hear that wrong? Sihun asked curiously. Were you aiming that mockery at me? Hans smirked. Who else is here besides us? Just then Inchial's voice rang out coldly. Hans Barmut refrained from making remarks unrelated to the exam. He bowed slightly. I'll be more careful. Sihun was briefly stunned. Hans Barmut. What the hell? This guy is actually the son of an examiner, Michael Barmut. Thinking this, Sihun grinned maliciously. No wonder they look so similar. Sihun turned to look at him with lingering resentment. The more he thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. Hans inwardly thought it seemed the kid had realized. He curled his lip in a sneer. I am the favored son of the vice principal. He claimed I am a commoner with low status and the weakest mana among the candidates. Whereas I was born into the famed Barmut family of alchemical smithing, and I possess magical power comparable to the top graduate of the second year. The outcome of this confrontation was decided from the start. Yunha watched their every move, smiling faintly. Lazurite and Hinam jade are both materials containing extremely large reserves of mana. Moreover, they are primal ores carrying water element spirit power. Hearing this, Inchial continued in a low tone. Water element mana is highly averse to fire, making forging them extremely difficult. Michael curled his lips. That's old news. The modern art of alchemical forging has advanced far beyond the past. Before his proud expression, Inchial interjected. It's true alchemical forging isn't bound by space or circumstance, but crafting time varies with the practitioner and ore type. So under today's conditions, only 30 minutes. Meanwhile, Michael continued to grin with a chilling malice, lowering his voice. Hans can synthesize any ore in just half an hour. A few days earlier, Hans had spun a crystal with spirit power. Inchial couldn't help feeling unsettled. Synthesize a resonance in only 30 minutes. He shivered involuntarily. What? If his skill can complete a resonance synthesis in 30 minutes, he's far beyond the second-year students, let alone a freshman. Inchial's gaze swept over him as suspicion formed. So that's it. Compress the time to forge the magic stone, prepare abundant raw materials in advance, and impose the alchemical method. They deliberately chose an exam topic that absolutely favors Hans, who has already excelled in alchemical forging. Inchial's eyes rested on his face. Michael is sly as a venomous snake. After a moment of silence, Sihun breathed out softly. This will do. Yunha looked at him curiously, unable to hide some surprise. That is, the group's gazes glued to him. Hydrate stone and crimson fire stone. Michael frowned slightly, clearly sensing unstable fluctuations from those two mineral masses. They were fire element versions of lazurite and hinam jade with sky-high mana concentrations. He coldly remarked that he didn't know how capable the boy was, but his ego was certainly enormous. On this side, Hans involuntarily glanced toward Sihun. He squinted at Sihun's pile of materials. Did he deliberately choose ores completely opposite to his own? Thinking that, Hans chuckled. What a fool. You with your meager mana don't dare dream of controlling the crimson fire stone, he smirked. His gaze dropped. This looks even easier than I thought. Suddenly, Hans's expression shifted. Turning back to Sihun, the system announced. The contract inscription skill has been activated. The system's voice rang dryly. Magical light surrounded his body. Contract inscription, harmony is active. Contract inscription allows the user to attach contract stones to available equipment slots. Left hand. The right hand was equipping the Ironfire bracelet on the right arm. Immediately after, a flame slowly fell straight down, only to see Sihun's arm enveloped by the flame. Witnessing that, Hans ground his teeth. That guy, what useless little tricks is he using? Meanwhile, he continued to concentrate on activating the metal blocks. At that point, the iron ores began to orbit each other. Seeing this, Sihun curled his lips into a smile. A spark of blazing light lit his eyes. At the same time, Yunha's group still stared at him. Over here, Michael raised an eyebrow. Is he planning to create resonance by using the same attribute as the minerals? How foolish. Basic principle is to use pure mana to make primal minerals resonate with one another. He judged silently that if forced that way, sooner or later the magical elements would explode out of control. Thinking that, Michael sneered, what an idiot. Surely he's about to cause an accident. Then suddenly Sihun thrust his hand forward. One could see his arm become covered in a layer of scales. The whole space fell silent. Sihun held his pose. Seeing that, Inchial and Yunha hastily bowed their heads. Meanwhile, Michael's eyes widened. What is this terrifying firepower? At that moment, a sword took shape. Upon seeing it, Sihun barely moved his lips. The system voice immediately reached his ears. Ironfire bracelet unequipped. Equipment processing complete. Congratulations, you have successfully forged the flame-accumulating sword sheath. Before the horrific sight, Yunha's eyes rounded in astonishment. Michael was so shocked his whole body froze. He couldn't help feeling somewhat unsettled. No way he actually succeeded. The system screen flashed. Flame-accumulating sword sheath rarity, rare, low quality. A sword sheath infused with concentrated fire element mana, capable of storing and amplifying fire-attributed spirit power, allowing the use of the special skill Firestorm. At the same time, cold sweat rolled down Hans's temple. He's finished the synthesis step. How is that speed possible? He stared blankly at his palm, his inner mind screaming wildly. This is utterly impossible. The magical elements should have detonated. Thinking this, Hans grew even more unsettled. Had he misunderstood something? Michael flinched. He hurriedly shouted, "Wait, stop at once. If you dare feed primal spirit power into those magic stones then," only to see the orb in Hans's hand begin to shake violently. His vision was suddenly obscured by heat, and then the sphere unexpectedly exploded. Shards flew everywhere. A loud blast rang out and the entire hall shook. That afternoon, in the refining department's examination hall, the scene cut to a room where crystal fragments littered the floor. On the other side, Hans appeared with a scratched-up face. After a moment of silence, Inchial hesitated and began, normally after a thorough evaluation. He paused for a beat, teeth clenched as if swallowing barely concealed anger. One of the two will be nominated as the department's top candidate. Saying this, Inchial looked up directly at Hans. However, it's unfortunate that, in that moment, he drew in, clutching his bleeding arm. His gaze rested on Hans and continued. Unexpectedly, the exam ended with one side forced to withdraw. At the same time, Michael bit his lip. Though annoyed, he kept his tone calm. Since a student was injured during the test, the best course now is to annul the results and schedule a make-up exam. Hearing this, Inchial spun around, objecting seriously. We have no right to overturn the results of a completed exam. After all, wasn't that accident caused by Hans's carelessness? He tilted his head, eyes sharp as knives locking onto Inchial, voice bone-chilling. Professor Kim, it seems you care more about scores than your students' safety. As soon as the words finished, he fell silent, a flash of anger crossing his face. Michael then stood up and leisurely continued, "Let's not speak of that now." He walked slowly to the center of the hall. His gaze drilled into Si-hoon as if trying to strip away his secrets. The fastest resonance ever recorded academically was 5 minutes. Yet, here he suddenly raised his voice, almost shouting. A freshman just arrived can channel mana and achieve instant resonance. Do you people think that's even possible? The original nature of alchemical forging was a technique created to craft weapons using only mana in situations where conventional forging is impossible. Therefore, the core of alchemical smithing isn't the traditional smithing that subdues ore at the cost of the smith's life, but to return to the mineral core and awaken the latent life within it. That is the true essence of alchemical forging. In that moment, Si-hoon had only one thought. What I just did proves that, and it's the answer smiths will find after countless failed trials. It's a simple method that will become standard in a few years, so I have no reason to hide it. But I'm not here to teach an old, stubborn man who only shouts and won't listen. Finally, he said coldly, "I really don't understand what nonsense you're spouting." Hearing that, Michael sneered. "Just as I suspected, you used cheating tricks." He gave a cold, contemptuous laugh. "A worthless rookie managed to forge a rare tier-piece. If you intended to cheat, at least do something a bit more convincing." Si-hoon frowned, eyes darkening at the insult, but his voice restrained. "What are you talking about?" Just then a voice cut into the tense conversation. "That's right, this is truly absurd." Michael bowed his head low, but the corner of his mouth curled with calculation. "I knew it. You will surely understand this, headmaster. Indeed, it's ridiculous. We should revoke Lee Si-hoon's right to compete for cheating and hold a re-examination." Meanwhile, she strolls past him unfazed. Yunha stopped before his sword. Inchial stared at her in bewilderment. "Headmaster." Yunha carefully grasped the sword. A whisper escaped. Unbelievable. Drool could be seen dripping from Yunha's mouth. Then suddenly she pointed at Si-hoon. "Student Lee Si-hoon." Yunha unexpectedly made a request, eyes shining like a child who'd found a treasure. "Let me bite a piece, no? Just lick it once, may I taste it?" As soon as the words finished, Michael was almost speechless, his gaze showing bewilderment. Meanwhile, Inchial stared at her in astonishment. "Lick it!" Suddenly, Yunha's stomach made a rumbling noise. At the sound, the group froze. That late afternoon, in the city center, Si-hoon was casually leaving the academy. He stood under the blazing red sunset, thinking that indeed the final tuning was still rather crude. The level of refinement hadn't reached the ultimate state yet. Thinking that, Si-hoon tried to reassure himself. Nevertheless, he smiled softly. His hair stirred in the evening breeze, his face showing an undisguised delight at seeing Vice Principal Barmut tremble with anger. A passerby eyed Si-hoon warily and whispered to his friend, "He looks creepy when he smiles." The friend urged him on. "Weird, don't look at them, just keep walking." Turning back to Si-hoon, he suddenly froze. "Wait, speaking of which, Barmut, that name sounds familiar, but I can't place where I've met him." Si-hoon slapped his forehead frantically, muttering nonstop, "Barmut, Barmut, Barmut." Images from his past life resurfaced. Louise whispered angrily that back in Babel, the cheap weapons she bought, after doing heavy labor under that bastard's orders, unexpectedly exploded. Then she suddenly shouted, her voice full of resentment, "That's why I was burned by Mana and ended up in such a miserable state. Damn him, if not for that man." Across from her, Si-hoon only looked at Louise with cold eyes. Back in the present, his steps halted as a horrifying thought flashed through Si-hoon's mind. The name of the smith who left the brawler Louise Valent permanently disabled was Barmut. Could Michael Barmut be that man? Thinking this, he frowned slightly. My top goal in this life was to quickly approach and reform the three dogs, but perhaps that's unnecessary for the brawler now. Si-hoon curled his lip into a cold smile, his gaze turning sinister. A thought flickered through his mind. If I just stop Michael Barmut's rampage, Louise will never stray down the wrong path. The scene quickly shifted to the refining department's meeting room. Inside, angry shouts rang out. "Are you planning to let student Si-hoon become our department's top candidate?" A representative spoke up, voice measured but laced with doubt. Professors from other departments chimed in. "Are you serious about this decision?" Someone nearby hesitated. "Even if you intend that, isn't this going a bit far?" Yoon-ha slowly placed both hands on the table, her gaze sweeping calmly across each face, voice low but resonant. "Does anyone here object?" An elderly professor subtly shook his head, eyes showing some hesitation, tone conciliatory. "Not exactly." Before anyone objects, Michael interjected, "This seems more like sincere advice." He continued unhurriedly, "After all, headmaster, you've only been in office a short time." Hearing that, Yoon-ha's expression shifted. A barely concealed anger appeared. Another person added, "Indeed, we admit his equipment is impressive, but perhaps we need to reassess more thoroughly." Inchial cut in. "Professors, you're saying that only because you haven't seen Lee Si-hoon's fire-accumulating sword sheath with your own eyes. While the craftsmanship may still be rough, if you look at how the mana is operated and its compatibility with the five-colored fire sword." One of them couldn't help but exclaim, "It's astonishing, but honestly I'm still concerned about its practical viability." At the same time, Yoon-ha spoke up. "This weapon has likely reached less than 60% of the completion Lee Si-hoon was aiming for, and that very shortcoming highlights its enormous potential." She emphasized each word. After witnessing, the room seemed to freeze as Yoon-ha continued slowly, each word falling like a hammer. "If, after seeing the upcoming demonstration by top student Lee Si-hoon, you still cannot accept my decision, then I will immediately resign from my position as headmaster." In the vast square, Ludwig's voice echoed from sound-amplifying magic, long and solemn like an ancient oath. 54 years ago, the Celestial Realm bestowed the Tower of Heroes for humanity's evolution. The atmosphere grew heavy as the illusion recreated a cracked sky. His tone deepened. In response, hell unleashed chaotic marshes that rot all life. While we found new opportunities to pursue, a colossal catastrophe also struck. Standing at the center of the Great Hall, Ludwig taught solemnly, his voice full of power. Babel was formed amid that turbulent current. This academy is the largest in history, built in the heart of the Pacific, and still stands today. Babel has trained countless outstanding heroes. At this, he solemnly named an example, the transcended Emperor Lord Ludwig Schubert. "And you too will become part of them." Ludwig's voice grew earnest. "Step forward, all of you who have come to the Babel Academy." His tone climbed, solemn and sacred like a battlefield oath. "That is the noble mission of a hero." The speaker was the transcended Emperor Louis Singh. Si-hoon stood motionless among the crowd. He quietly observed Ludwig on the podium, plotting inwardly. Up close he seems very kind, though in truth he's not simply a harmless old man. The host stepped forward, raising the microphone. "Next we will present performances by the top students of this year's admissions. Please, top students from each department, step onto the stage." At the invitation, the young men and women ascended the platform in turn. Si-hoon watched those proud backs advance, his expression darkening as memories of his past life flickered by. Top student of the department. Back then, I wondered why so many became arrogant simply because of good academy results. Just then the host shouted, Now we will begin the skill demonstrations. He glanced around, the corner of his mouth forcing a smile. Witnessing this, it seems I now understand the issue. At the same time, the host raised his voice. The test subject used for today's demonstration is none other than this masterpiece, ladies and gentlemen. No sooner had he finished speaking than Automaton Model 9 appeared. The moment it came into view, he excitedly introduced it. A golem from the production workshop, Automaton Model 9. It even possesses combat strength comparable to a C-rank hero. Over here, Sihun's gaze locked onto Automaton Model 9. He smiled faintly with interest. A combat-specialized automaton, huh? Since it isn't equipped with specific weapons, it'll probably rely on martial arts. The host gestured toward the arena entrance. The opening act will be the representative from the combat department, his voice ringing with drama. The performance will be carried out by Akarquif's top student, Jake Myers. Shortly after, Jake Myers appeared on the stage alongside Automaton Model 9. Sihun narrowed his eyes watching the dark-haired youth step out. If it's Jake, I think he's the third son of the Myers family. Rumor has it he's an oddball who pursues martial arts despite being born into a family famed for swordsmanship. Seems the rumor is true. Just then the host shouted, "Then we'll begin immediately." On the opposite side, the automaton's eyes glowed. That was also when he signaled, "Start the match now." No sooner had he spoken than it spun forcefully on its toes against the ground. The automaton lunged toward Jake like a tornado. It immediately delivered a punch. Jake spun aside at once to evade. Meanwhile, the automaton wildly swung its fist at him. Afterward, Jake leapt down, toes skimming the ground. He looked up toward it. "Now it's my turn to perform." Saying that, Jake hesitated briefly, then lunged straight at the automaton. You could see him clench his fists. He immediately struck a punch straight into its body. Seeing that, the students were nearly stunned into silence. On this side, Jake continued to attack the automaton frantically. Sihun widened his eyes, witnessing that terrifying burst of speed. What is going on? I clearly remember he died young while at A rank in his mid-20s. Thinking this, he couldn't help feeling unsettled. With this level, he should be a genius who appears once every 10 years at Babel. Sihun murmured inwardly in doubt. Why in my previous life did he only reach A rank? Turning back to Jake, he curled his lip in a cold smile. With just this, in the final moment, he swung his arm to end the battle with the automaton. Its head rang through the air and then fell to the ground. Jake sheathed his weapon and stood upright amid the dissipating dust. He exhaled softly. "It's been a long time since I've felt this free to move." The host's voice trembled briefly. "Truly." Then he nearly shouted with excitement. What a visually stunning and magnificent performance. Student Jake, he defeated an automaton with a C-rank hero's strength in a single breath. The host turned to Jake, unable to contain his admiration. This is indeed the caliber of Akarquif's top student. On this side, Sihun frowned inwardly. He really caused a massive explosion right from the start. The next performer will definitely be under tremendous pressure. The announcer's voice rang out again, this time with a different tone, calmer and more solemn. Next in the program, please welcome the top student of the support department. The performer will be student Inao Erica. He raised an eyebrow as the long black-haired girl stepped forward, so she's the top student. Pressure. Nothing to worry about at all. Erica, the eldest daughter of the Inao clan, one of Japan's 3 most illustrious families, wasn't a peak conqueror, but she built a reputation as an S-rank hero wielding a mythic-grade weapon. Yet she ultimately became corrupted into a fiend and was slain by her own kin. At that, Sihun silently made a decision in his mind. Since her future would be eroded into monstrosity, forming an alliance would bring him no benefit. Then suddenly Erica turned and looked at him. At that, Sihun froze for a moment, staring at her in bewilderment. He watched Erica's steps naively, his heart tangled like silk. What was that? Did she just look at me? At the same time, the host announced gravely that the automaton used for this performance was Model 9, equipped with armor, boasting defensive capabilities 1.5 times superior to the previous version. He shouted excitedly, shaking the air. "Let's see what surprises student and now Erica will bring." Then suddenly, Erica produced a crow. Her eyes flared with a demonic light. She murmured a command under her breath. "Advance." No sooner had she spoken than the crow launched straight outward. It shot up into the air and began circling the automaton. Surprised by the unexpected sight, Sihun felt a momentary dismay. Just a crow. At the same time, the automaton lifted its head to follow it. Its eyes suddenly glowed a sinister red. On this side, he watched the automaton intently. He judged inwardly that the automaton had switched to full defensive mode. Penetrating such a sturdy defense would be very difficult, especially for a model specialized in defense. Turning back to Erica, The corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Suddenly, the crow spread its wings wide. Its legs spread to reveal sharp talons. One of the crow's eyes also flashed a blue light. Under the sunlight, it stretched its wings wide. Then the crow suddenly accelerated, diving straight toward the automaton. Below, the space fell into chaos as dust and earth flew everywhere. Seeing that scene, Si-hoon was nearly stunned. On this side, cracks appeared on the automaton's body, and electrical energy surged outward. A hole had formed in its body from who knows when. Immediately, the automaton's body collapsed to the ground. Seeing that, Erica beckoned and the crow returned. The host once again cheered. Amazing, truly extraordinary. With a single strike, she felled the armored automaton, piercing an opponent with C-rank strength. The group cheered. Erica is incredible. Turning back to Si-hoon, he forced a smile. With the crowd so roused, he felt he'd be booed if he merely showed a weapon and was done. Just then the host shouted, "And finally, the top student of the Borsapa Technology Department. Please welcome student Lee Si-hoon." At that moment, the host introduced enthusiastically. Continuing the program, we will now begin the performance of Borsapa Technology's top student, Lee Si-hoon. Elsewhere, Performance Supervisor 1, Ludwig Schubert, was watching the match on a screen. He couldn't help but chuckle softly. This cohort of top students is truly impressive. How long has it been since we've seen a top student from refining? That said, he felt a bit worried. Would the pressure be too much for that young man? Beside him was Performance Supervisor 2, Headmaster Ryu Yunha, who asserted confidently that no problems would arise. The stands buzzed as Si-hoon stepped into the light. The host smiled suggestively. Might he deliver a performance surpassing the explosions put on by Jake and Erica? Someone exclaimed, "He's so handsome." The host grew curious. Rare equipment? That's unusual for the refining department. A female student cheered excitedly. At the same moment, Si-hoon decisively drew the sword from its sheath. He swung the sword strongly to one side, his gaze fixed on the opponent. In that instant, the image of the sword appeared behind Si-hoon along with a myriad of functions. A male student spoke up, half admiring, half doubtful. Indeed, it's miraculous for a freshman to craft rare-grade gear. The student beside him hesitated, yet compared to other departments it still seems to lack a breakthrough. Rustling murmurs spread as some students showed disappointment. A rare-grade item that looks a bit plain. After all, the prior departments have already put on such flashy displays. The male student couldn't help feeling uneasy. I don't even know what he's going to show in this performance. I really want to know. In a corner of the stands, Michael curled his lips, his eyes glittering with ambition. Fate has sided with me. He stared wickedly toward the Borsapa carriage. This time the headmaster's seat will surely be mine. In contrast to Michael, Yunha's face was calm as the sea. Back in the stands, the host quickly announced, "To serve this performance, Model 10 with power on par with a D-rank hero." He suddenly cut in. "No." Si-hoon looked up, his eyes flashing like a blade drawn from a sheath. His words silenced the plaza. "Switch to Model 8 and please equip it with armor." The host nearly dropped the roster in his hand, stammering in shock. What is he requesting? Model 8 can sometimes withstand attacks from a B-rank hero. Yet he's asking they put armor on it too. He hesitated for a moment. Well, that. The host faltered as he continued. It's hard to prepare that request instantly. He thought inwardly, are you trying to ruin the performance? At that moment, Inchial spoke up. I've arranged everything beforehand. A metallic entity suddenly appeared upon his words. He looked up toward the automaton. This automaton was now fully armored. Seeing that, the host was momentarily stunned. Had he prepared it in advance? He nervously looked around, his tone faltering. If you're determined to do that. At the same time, Si-hoon turned to look at Inchial. He was silent, his eyes expectant as they rested on him. From the VIP stands, the host shouted excitedly, "Then go all out." He forced a wry smile. "Now I don't even know what will happen in this match." Shortly after, the host cried out to begin. As soon as the battle bell rang, Inchial tensed. In that moment, he whispered, "Cause a ruckus." Si-hoon smirked. "All right." He glanced toward the stands where Inchial watched, a faint smile playing in his eyes. Perhaps I should live up to his expectations a little. The sword in his hand emitted a fierce spiritual force. Si-hoon gently bowed, and the energy rolled into a circle. Seeing that, Jake shouted in excitement, "That's insane." Meanwhile, Hands curled his lip in contempt. All show, no substance. What can someone lacking mana possibly accomplish? The fiery streams within the five-colored flame sword inherently conflict with one another. This explosion could backfire on the wielder without massive mana to control it. However, by exploiting the fire energy storage capability of the fire-accumulating sheet and the technique of channeling chained flames inward, Si-hoon murmured, "The charging process is complete." Across from him, the automaton activated its shield layer. Meanwhile, he swung the sword hard, igniting the flames. The move rocked the entire stands. A thought formed in Si-hoon's mind. If I trigger the conflagration now, the fire spirits compressed inside will. His gaze locked onto the automaton's protective layer. Si-hoon muttered at the decisive moment, detonate simultaneously. In the stands, Michael's face went ashen, as if he sensed something wrong. The host gaped in shock. What the hell is this madman planning to do? After a while, the thick dust gradually cleared. Si-hoon slowly sheathed the sword. Then he breathed out in short, heavy gasps. When it was over, Si-hoon scanned the cut across the arena. Had he gone a bit too far? Recognizing the emergency, the host grew agitated, and the technical support team was rushed to the central hall immediately. He hastily declared that with that display, the competition was over. After a while, the click of high heels echoed throughout the great hall. Inside, Si-hoon wore an embarrassed expression. Upon seeing him, Yoon-ha bowed slightly. Sorry to have kept you waiting after calling you here. I had to help clear the wreckage in the arena. Si-hoon scratched his head awkwardly. Please don't worry. I'm the one who should apologize. I regret causing that scene in the central hall. He lowered his voice. I should have controlled my power a bit better. She looked puzzled. What are you talking about, student Si-hoon? He asked anxiously. Did you call me here to scold me? Yoon-ha immediately denied it. Of course not. No, the real reason we invited you here is. Just then, her stomach growled again. The strange sound made Si-hoon pause for a moment. She cleared her throat softly to hide her embarrassment. What I mean is, finally she made an offer. I'm willing to pay 10 times the market price. Yoon-ha looked him squarely in the eye with resolve. Would you agree to transfer the 5-colored flame sword and the fire-accumulating sheath to me? Hearing that, Si-hoon's eyes widened for a moment. What? At that instant, a bond with Yoon-ha was established. Yoon-ha suddenly leaned forward, speaking in a coaxing tone. It's truly a magnificent set of gear. The system's screen suddenly lit up before Si-hoon. A contract with the entity Ruha had been formed. The creator bond with Si-hoon is now at level 1. He opened his eyes wide, his pupils trembling with astonishment. So fast. In my previous life, I had to give her weapons many times before this bond formed. Si-hoon replied awkwardly, Thank you, sir. He reassured himself silently, after all, this is a stroke of good luck. Lines of mana characters appeared before his eyes as the system's voice echoed steadily. Extracting the contract, the announcement's tone grew solemn, as if declaring a rare treasure. Proceeding to extract the contract from target Ryu Yoon-ha. The contract, appetite for metal, ranked high-grade, supreme quality, an iron that generates heat by consuming other metals. It will corrode any iron material it touches and absorb the core into itself, absorbing iron to produce mineral blood. Si-hoon stared blankly at the object before him, so it's done. Just then Yoon-ha leaned forward again. Are you going to sell that item to me? He immediately shook his head. And no, sir. At that she raised an eyebrow slightly, but you just said it's done. Suddenly a voice came from outside. Headmaster, this is Kim In-cheol. He looked up, his voice clearly formal, as if issuing an unpostponable order. The Academy headmaster announces that the awards ceremony will commence immediately. In-cheol turned to Si-hoon. May I take student Si-hoon along? She nodded slightly, her gaze deep and still as a moonlit lake. Understood. Si-hoon quickly stepped outside, covertly glancing back. See you later, sir. On this side, Yoon-ha's stomach continued its plaintive protests. The place regarded as the heart of Babel Academy. The main glass-domed building, Mardwick Manor. The scene cut to inside the manor, as Si-hoon hurriedly followed In-cheol from behind. As they walked, he murmured a reminder, his gaze sterner than usual. Mind your manners before the Academy head. He won't just generously overlook your ruining the central hall during the performance. In-cheol paused a beat and continued. He is also a person of a completely different rank from us. He smiled faintly, his expression unusually calm. You needn't worry too much, sir. Si-hoon hurried inside. Singh looked straight at the youth before him. You must be student Lee Si-hoon, the ascended emperor, headmaster Ludwig. Before I reverse time, he was the hero who sacrificed himself in a solitary battle against the world-destroying demon god, one of the 6 great demon gods. The deadly bearing of that man suddenly resurfaced in memory. A feeling of awe welled up within him, truly a perfectionist. Ludwig spoke up then. The weapons you displayed today were incredibly interesting. He suddenly sighed. I can't say I have no regrets, but I had very high expectations for you. Hearing this, Si-hoon froze in place. Regret welled in him like a smoldering fire in a forge. Though prepared, he still felt like throwing the 5-colored fire sword and its scabbard back into the forge. Just then, Ludwig made a proposal. Therefore, to acknowledge your talent and effort, I will grant you 2 rewards. He asked seriously, tell me what you need. Si-hoon widened his eyes slightly. For the first time, surprise showed on his usually calm face. 2 rewards. He answered quickly, his voice clear and without hesitation. I wish for rewards that can increase my mana and my memory capacity. As soon as the words left his mouth, Ludwig raised his arm into the air, and a sigil formed in the space between. Si-hoon stared at the two treasures. Jet black stone, hero-ranked, exquisite quality, a fragment glowing ink-dark falling from the night, with the trait of devouring everything except shadow, able to absorb mana from anything that touches the crystal. Dream Ivory Tusk, hero-ranked, a tusk of a dream-eating creature. It contains dream magic capable of crossing the border between reality and dream, helping connect to dreams by using dream magic as a source. He wore a bewildered expression. The black-dyed stone alone is rare, but the Dream Ivory Tusk is much harder to find. Si-hoon smirked. It's a bit hard to control now, but I already have ideas on how to use them. He studied him for a long moment, his voice softer but still weighty. Are you satisfied with them? Si-hoon bowed slightly in thanks. They are truly wonderful, sir. Just as he was leaving, a voice rang out. What are you thinking about? The mirror asked with suspicion. About only that boy receiving 2 rewards. This action isn't like your usual style at all. Ludwig replied offhandedly. I gave them simply because the child had the capacity to assimilate them, receiving the answer. It couldn't help but exclaim, is that so? I always felt he was like an old man in a young body. He said in a low voice, that only proves he has such profound depth that even you can sense it. Ludwig watched Si-hoon's figure recede down the ancient corridor. Moreover, even I cannot fully fathom the depths of that youth. The scene centers on the mansion called Mardwick. Inside a classroom, the group of male students kept discussing. A male student cheerfully approached Hans. Hans, where do you want to go for lunch? He declined immediately without hesitation. Sorry, I have an appointment with Senior Howard today. The student gaped in surprise. An appointment with the third-year valedictorian of Borsippa. Hans answered nonchalantly, it's just that our families are close, so we meet often. He said he'd give me some advice about life at the academy, so we're meeting. The student stepped a bit closer. Well then, if it's okay, I can come along. At that moment, Si-hoon entered. He glanced at Hans with a cold look. As soon as they saw Si-hoon, the whole classroom fell silent. His gaze fixed on Hans once again. He involuntarily felt a chill down his spine. What is that strange look about? Seeing this, Si-hoon curled his lips in a mocking smirk. It seems he has begun to recognize his place. Over here, Hans ground his teeth as his pride was rubbed raw. Damn it, must I lose to such an inferior like that again? The classroom door slammed open. Inchial strode in with decisive steps, his stern gaze sweeping the room. Everyone quickly take your seats. He cast his eyes around the class. All right. It seems everyone is present. Inchial turned his gaze to the class and continued. Since this is the first lesson, we'll begin with self-introductions. He introduced seriously. This metal bar is a material called reflective alloy. It is sensitive to mana tens of times more than ordinary ore, therefore. If you channel mana into it like this. Saying this, Inchial emphasized each word. A weapon in your mind will be easily formed. At the same time, Si-hoon stared at him with reverence. It's no accident he's on the list of the world's top 100 artisans. But when I checked the packed stone, I vaguely realized that this person truly is a genuine talent. Inchial paused, his voice dropping with philosophical depth. Due to its extreme sensitivity, it's difficult to use as a real combat weapon, but it reflects traits from the subconscious, helping the user see themselves. He suddenly raised his voice. That is why we call equipment made from reflective alloy substitute egos. The department's self-introduction will be replaced by creating these egos. At the last minute, Inchial reminded them that the finished pieces will be exhibited in the main hall for a week, so do your best. The students replied in unison, yes, sir. Si-hoon's gaze landed on a male student. He thought to himself that this reflective alloy must be worth over 10 million won per piece. Typical Babel flair, even the greeting is extravagant. At the same time, Hans flinched when he gripped the sword. Seeing that, he sighed endlessly, really. Si-hoon turned and sighed in helplessness. There isn't a single person here with the most important talent. Just then Inchial spoke, finally inviting Lee Si-hoon. He replied quickly, present, sir. Si-hoon thought to himself that since he's already the department's top student, there's no reason to hide his abilities anymore. A bold idea suddenly occurred to him. If I'm going to do it then. Si-hoon's pupils flashed with the fire of ambition. Should I go all out this once? Then suddenly, a loud explosion erupted inside the classroom. At the same time, a male student sneered. There really are a lot of people gathered here. Must be the pull of Lee Si-hoon. He continued with a mocking, annoyed tone. It's ridiculous how they keep praising him as if he's on another level when he's only a freshman. The student beside him agreed. Exactly right. The male student leaned in, nodding slightly. That's exactly what I wanted to say. The two looked up toward the object as Inchial's words echoed. although an unusual incident occurred during crafting when it absorbed 19 nearby reflective alloys. We assessed that this actually demonstrated the aptitude of student Lee Si-hoon, so we decided to display it as is. A male student snorted, a sarcastic voice rising amid the murmuring crowd. That's surely just a coincidence caused by some skill. The student nearby tilted his chin toward the piece with eyes full of doubt and envy. Wasn't this just because he used too many reflective alloys at once? Another student interjected, it's been ages since a top graduate came from the refining department. Maybe they're trying to promote him as a true genius. Just then Erica suddenly spoke up. I actually have a slightly different viewpoint. Jake stepped closer, sneering, I agree with her opinion too. Saying this, Jake ground his teeth. It seems the number of reflective alloys present there still isn't enough to fully showcase Lee Si-hoon's true potential. In another development, only the hammer face came down hard. At that moment, Si-hoon's face broke out in cold sweat. The man lowered his voice, his eyes flashing with incredulous surprise. Did you time it then? Up until now, there hasn't even been an error as small as 0.01 seconds. Assistant Ha looked at him in amazement. What else can we possibly teach a prodigy like this? He smiled slightly, fine. Let's skip his part then, and signaled, anyone want to see a demonstration? After a while, Assistant Ha announced, all right, class dismissed. Over here, Si-hoon's gaze remained fixed on the hammer. Then he stared at the metal fragments on the table. Without hesitation, Si-hoon raised the hammer again. Assistant Ha suddenly spoke up. Are you planning to smash it? He stopped, bowed politely, and greeted the assistant instructor. He stepped closer and reminded him, we have to hand these items in after this forging class, so don't damage them. Si-hoon tilted his head, we have to turn them in. Assistant Ha put on a weary expression. Where do you think students get the budget? Babel will provide support based on performance, the number of weapons sold to the outside market. He pondered for a moment, then asked, so exactly what are you dissatisfied with right now? Your physique or your mana? Taken aback by the question, Si-hoon smiled softly. The biggest problem at the moment is my body. At that instant, complex thoughts rose in him. To make training tools, I need to forge the Maxstone, but I lack the endurance to do that work. The assistant tilted his head, his tone suggestive as if offering a tempting shortcut, if that's truly necessary for the forging. After a moment's thought, he proposed, wouldn't using enhancement charms be faster than physical training? He couldn't help but laugh when he heard it. I'd never even considered that option, because it's the method I always avoided before turning back time. The corner of Si-hoon's mouth rose as if he'd found a new path. Since I returned to the past and currently have stamina issues, I can forge the Maxstone while under the effect of enhancement charms. He bowed his head lightly. Thank you very much for the useful advice. Assistant Ha shook his head. It's no big deal. Then Si-hoon looked up, his eyes drifting to the sword in his hands as he performed the casting. He reminded him not to use more mana than necessary. Reduce it to about 70% of the current level and focus the strike on a single point. Before leaving, Si-hoon affirmed that doing so would yield better results for him right now. He forced a smile at that. A freshman just gave the assistant instructor a pointer. Then Assistant Ha turned and looked toward the hammer. At that moment, the air grew increasingly heated. Babel always encourages proactive self-study for each student. The system's voice rang out. The door is beginning to open. The instructor's announcements keep coming. You have the right to enroll in classes from other specialties, or even take dozens of subjects in a single semester. However, you are required to complete all of your major courses. And if you accumulate 3 failing grades, you will be expelled immediately. Everything is completely free, but you must take responsibility for your choices. The announcement suddenly blared, next stop, the district for the School of Magic. At that moment, Si-hoon casually stepped off the tram. As he looked up, Erica suddenly appeared. A male student blocked the way, taunting, hey, don't stand in the way, move aside. Si-hoon frowned. Who are these guys barging in like this? He said loudly, you're the ones who should move aside. Hearing that, the male student's body trembled with anger as Erica stepped in close. She asked curiously, where are you heading? Taken aback by Erica's sudden action, the male student stammered, Miss Erica. Over here, Si-hoon replied honestly, to the School of Magic. I'm wondering if there's any elective I can register for. Seeing that, she decisively offered, then let me guide you. He hurriedly interjected, Miss Erica, the meeting is about to start. She curtly replied, you lot go on without us. The male student urged anxiously, but the seniors insisted they really wanted her present. Erica glanced over coldly, her voice calm and not open to argument. I'm not interested. Turning back to Si-hoon, his gaze did not waver. Then the two quickly left despite the male student calling out Miss Erica. And as the space grew quiet, Erica turned to him, her expression noticeably more serious. Exactly what kind of elective are you looking for? Si-hoon answered slowly, I'm trying to learn more about enhancement charms. She pressed for more details, specifically what kind of enhancement effect. He replied calmly, something that can boost physical ability but must not interfere with the forging process. Hearing that, Erica suggested, then try barrier magic. Sihun froze. Barrier magic. Isn't that spell usually only for defense? She explained slowly, it can vary widely depending on how you use it. Erica took a thin sheet of paper from her pocket and signaled, I'll show you an example. She held the paper out toward him. Try tearing this sheet of paper. Sihun took it, feeling a thin veil of mana over the surface. Surprised, he wondered, did she just increase its durability? No, not exactly. It retains its original properties, but becomes noticeably stiffer when subjected to a strong external force. Sihun stared at the scrap of paper, analyzing that this technique suits forging work perfectly because it requires extremely precise control. Erica smiled faintly. For complex applications like this, you'll probably need a professor's help. He looked at the paper innocently, suspicion arising. Hey, this spell formula looks very familiar. Meanwhile, she kept chattering. The professor who teaches barrier construction is married to a relative branch of my family, so I can introduce you to him directly if you want. Saying that, Erica raised her voice slightly to change the subject. Then suddenly Sihun exclaimed, that's it. And the paper tore instantly. At the sight of that, she couldn't help feeling a little unsettled. You were able to understand my family's barrier magic in such a short time, and even dispel it. That morning at the School of Magic of University, Sihun's appearance beside her in the middle of campus stunned everyone, becoming the focus of curious stares and constant whispers. Why is Erica walking with someone from another faculty? I think I saw them together yesterday, too. If I remember correctly, they appeared together at the recent exhibition. Amid the gathered stares and whispers across campus, he could only sigh in resignation. Rumors really do spread fast. Why do people always meddle in others' business? It's ridiculous. If Erica truly had feelings for me, there would already be a bond between us. Anyway, I wonder what criteria they use to select students for the class. I registered, but they said we have to take a test first. Erica immediately announced, this is the site for the barrier structure exam. Sihun glanced around and asked skeptically, this forest. The other candidates kept cursing in frustration. Damn it, what remote backwater is this located in? He silently observed the forest and thought to himself, are we playing a treasure hunt to take this exam or what? This is getting annoying. Could they have used a barrier to hide something or? Sihun accidentally stamped on a strange spot, and the barrier surrounding the forest instantly shattered. As soon as the barrier broke beneath Sihun's feet, the assistant instructor immediately appeared and announced crisply, you've passed the test. He was shocked and could only exclaim in amazement. What? Robert looked up at the assistant by the desk with suspicion. Did that young lady take an interest in our top student? Professor Robert Perry, specialist in barrier structure at School of Magic. He pulled out his phone and answered, yes, look at this list. As he glanced at the list on the assistant's phone, he murmured skeptically, I'm also surprised she suddenly applied for such a basic class. Because of that appeal, the number of applicants tripled, but I don't feel pleased about it, especially with a proposal from the Inao heir as well. So this year we've added a test using the Lost Spirit Maze. The Lost Spirit Maze is a type of barrier that distorts the senses and causes disorientation. Though only a basic barrier, someone utterly ignorant of magic might not even notice its presence. Witnessing the scene, Robert stood stunned, inwardly marveling as he recognized the student's true ability. Even without the young lady offering a hand, he could break the maze purely by instinct. He declared loudly to the crowd, all of you here have passed the first round. From now on, we'll sort the class via the second test. A student immediately raised his hand confidently, may I go first? That student calculated inwardly. This was a golden chance to impress Erica. Robert nodded in approval, very well. The second test is simple. Use your mana to dismantle the active barrier before you. I will evaluate based on completion time, so be fast and precise. The contest began. A barrier woven like a web with a spider at its center acting as the nucleus. The spider would constantly evade whenever it sensed mana traveling along the threads, and as long as it existed, the web would continuously regenerate. Facing the barrier, the volunteering student froze, tense calculations running through his head. Using conventional means to encircle the entire magical structure would require more mana than he had. If that's the case, I'll use speed to overwhelm it. He looked at his watch and said sternly, 2 minutes 23 seconds. You need to focus more on understanding the barrier's structure, though this result isn't terrible. The student glanced toward the young lady hopping for encouragement, but Erica's face remained expressionless, as still as a glassy lake, leaving him to bow his head in bitter resignation. Thank you, Professor. Then Robert issued a curt command. Next student next, hurry up. After everyone has tried, he helplessly declared that all of you will start from the basic class. Next is Erica Anau's turn. You may begin. She stepped forward with unusual calm. Erica merely lifted a finger to touch the barrier. The entire ring of the barrier flared bright and shattered into 100 pieces, silence hanging in the air. The surrounding students stood dumbfounded with shock. Then whispers rose like waves. How could she be so fast? She had deconstructed the entire formula and caused the barrier to collapse completely. True to a top student's caliber, amid unending praise, he stepped forward slowly, glanced at the stopwatch, and said coldly, 22 seconds, well done. But using the standard dismantling method, you could have been 2 seconds faster. Unfazed by Robert's strictness, Erica bowed slightly and replied calmly, I will remember that. He said nothing more, his sharp eyes flicking to the next contestant as a tacit warning of his high standards, then called the name clearly. Finally, Lee Si-hoon. Watching Si-hoon step forward, Robert judged inwardly that there was nothing remarkable about him. Let's see what his true ability is. Instead of hastily casting spells or performing elaborate preparations, he calmly sat down right in front of the barrier. The students' whispers grew louder. What the hell is he doing? Does he not know the test is timed? Si-hoon remained composed, his gaze steady as he methodically dissected each layer of the energy screen's structure. This barrier shared traits very similar to Maxstone. It self-repairs and returns to its previous state if an impact doesn't reach a certain threshold, therefore. To forge such a stone, a smith must deliver all impulses simultaneously with precise ratios. Robert finally lost patience, strode forward, and demanded, What on earth are you trying to do? Listen to me, her voice cut in, leave him be. At Erica's authoritative request, he could only fall silent helplessly. Robert said nothing further, tightened his lips, and stepped back. In the absolute quiet, Si-hoon's mind was working at full speed. So if I do this, can I retain the impulses accumulated inside the stone, instead of it crumbling or dissipating as usual? The moment his finger touched the weak point, the entire barrier erupted in intense flame. Amid the thick atmosphere of astonishment, Si-hoon spoke in an ordinary tone, casually, as if finishing a trivial chore done. Just like that, he thought, I can forge Maxstone now. Si-hoon stood up. He stepped over the scattered debris with indifferent air, as if its existence had meant nothing. With the barrier dissolved, he rose decisively and walked away, ignoring all the gazes around him. The assistant checked the watch and announced, the time is 7 minutes 45 seconds. Robert watched Si-hoon's retreating back in silence, thinking to himself that how long the student took was ultimately meaningless. This time he took 7 minutes, but next time he encounters a similar barrier, he'll destroy it in the blink of an eye. He didn't merely dispel the barrier. He established a formula himself to neutralize that spell. She watched his lone figure go, her eyes full of worry. Erica thought to herself that if his extraordinary forging skills were combined with magic, she'd be genuinely concerned about what terrifying artifacts he might create. A letter arrived notifying us that we've received an application from first-year student Lee Si-hoon to perform intermediate forging using materials of hero grade or higher. Under Article 8 of the Forge Safety Regulations, anyone wishing to supervise should please contact us. The instructor looked at the computer screen and wondered how many people would show up this time. Suddenly messages flooded in and surprised him. Wow, everyone responded quickly. However, not a single person from Vice Principal Michael's faction submitted an application. Rumor has it the atmosphere there is tense because his son was demoted to second rank. So the rumor was true. The instructor began to calculate. Then I should start selecting people, he thought, eyes widening in astonishment, reading a message that the headmistress announced she would personally oversee Lee Si-hoon's intermediate forging. Suddenly Yuha appeared and called out, Long time no see, student Lee Si-hoon. He was inwardly stunned. Busy as she is, she came here in person. She replied calmly in her capacity as headmistress, I'm here to verify your abilities with my own eyes. Si-hoon didn't look directly at Yun-ha and only replied softly, if it's come to this, I'll have to devote all my effort to crafting. With that, he immediately began forging on the spot. There are many methods to process Maxstone, but the most demanding technique among them is the night screen process. You must place the stone in a space completely devoid of light and use mana to separate impurities from the ink-like stone spreading like water. In this step, a tiny mistake in mana control will cause the stone to freeze instantly and become useless. It sounds simple, but in reality it's akin to restructuring matter. She remained absolutely silent, observing each of Si-hoon's movements. While his hands moved rhythmically, Si-hoon's mind began calculating coldly. A quarter is the best limit I can reach. If I reduce it any further, its performance won't be sufficient. In the second step, he began to conjure a blazing red flame directly from his palm. That overwhelming heat engulfed the metal mass, causing the space around to twist with each of Si-hoon's breaths. He guided mana through the deep red flame to filter out the suitable portion of the fire essence. This stabilized flame is called the roaming wildfire, and it has the property of maintaining the exact temperature it had at the moment it formed. The third step was to strike the heavy ink stone with a hammer wrapped in the roaming wildfire. The key was not to pause until the deformation lessened thanks to the flame's properties. Watching the blazing flame, Yunha pondered silently that even if he is fire immune, that doesn't mean he doesn't feel pain. How much has he worn himself down? He swung the hammer repeatedly with a strangely fervent intensity. As hammer blows echoed throughout the forge, Erica stood quietly in a secluded corner of the campus, waiting for Si-hoon. Despite Si-hoon's self-forgetting fervor, she stood nearby looking rather indifferent. Yunha yawned repeatedly, appearing sleepy. She stood there weary and dejected. The 4 hours of forging practice had passed. The properties of the inkstone, having absorbed the flame to its limit, began to change. He exhaled, thinking to himself, it's done. The deformation has stopped. Melt the processed inkstone mass, then pour it into the mold prepared beforehand. The weary slump on Yunha's face vanished at once and was replaced by a look of astonishment. Casting, not forging. The properties will change because of the darkness deep within the mold. What on earth is he thinking? As Si-hoon was about to begin the fourth step, Yunha suddenly warned, wait. Despite her sharp objection, he didn't stop. Si-hoon's mind was now only numbers and magical structures, gradually slowing the transformations in the ink stone with a formula that broke the barrier, and built a mana circuit within that brief moment. Just as the circuit formed during the inkstone's fleeting transformation, everything abruptly went silent, revealing in Si-hoon's hands the final product, an ink spider bracelet of deep, somber black. The moment the bracelet took shape, a mechanical sound rang out, shattering the stillness. The system notice suddenly appeared before him. Permanent item, ink spider bracelet completed. To break prejudices, a bold challenge spares no one. Even if the material's potential is not fully tapped, the smith's forging skill to create new capabilities deserves top ranking. You have acquired the skill Black Soul Thread. Ink Spider Bracelet, rare quality, average grade. A bracelet forged from dense ink stone. It possesses the attribute of absorbing its wearer's mana, and its weight increases in proportion to the mana absorbed and stored. The wearer's stored mana can be used to trigger the Ring Burst skill. In the absolute quiet, Si-hoon breathed softly and said, succeeded. In the silence, Yunha's hungry stomach let out a loud rumble, as if announcing it to the world. He paused and glanced with a puzzled look, while she blushed and hurriedly covered her stomach with her hand, as if to hide the betrayal of her body. Si-hoon could only look up at the sky and sigh helplessly, as if witnessing a legend fall before his eyes. Yunha observed it and offered a subjective opinion. Could this be a resonance phenomenon? It's impressively simple to look at. However, its power isn't overwhelmingly strong. If done properly, we could aim to create a set effect. He kept a calm demeanor, presented the item to her, and said, I'm sorry I can't offer you a weapon while you're in trouble because of me. I don't know if this will help, perhaps as a small palate-pleasing snack, but at least please accept it. Si-hoon said nothing more, holding his position and looking toward Yunha. She took the item from Si-hoon and unexpectedly activated the unique skill, Soul Forging Furnace. Yunha tasted it lightly and immediately commented that it was quite tasty. He blurted out, really. She replied nonchalantly, yes, in a figurative sense. Its flavor is like crumbs of fried snacks. Si-hoon thought with relief, do I have a habit of making everything to Yunha's taste now? Perhaps that will easily raise my bond with her. He smiled faintly at Yunha and gently said, I'm glad you like it. She nodded in satisfaction and said, of course, though she was a little regretful to eat this while those other items were laid out before her. By the way, when do you plan to handle the 5-colored saber and the ember-accumulating sword scabbard? Si-hoon shook his head slightly, his gaze calm as ever, and answered, I don't intend to sell them right now. Yunha paused, puzzled and a little anxious, and pressed, excuse me, what do you mean? Are the prices still not high enough? He replied calmly, I'll keep them to prepare for the conquest class. Si-hoon smiled faintly and thought to himself that hunger is said to be the best seasoning. He nodded slightly as if promising, then said, once I have equipment worthy of giving you, I'll let you know first. She blushed, shook off her embarrassment to regain composure, and said, I'll be eagerly awaiting that. So the forging is finished for good now? He replied, yes. Yunha then spoke up to remind them. Then let's leave. The staff will come to clean up. Si-hoon answered hoarsely, lucky because I have no strength left to clean. As they started to walk, he suddenly felt dizzy and fell backward. She hastily caught Si-hoon. Yunha asked anxiously, "Are you all right?" He steadied himself and replied, "Ah, yes, I'm fine. Maybe I misallocated my stamina a bit." She offered, "Shall I take you back to the dorms, or are you afraid of heights?" Si-hoon answered decisively, "No." Immediately, Yunha lifted him up in a princess carry before he could react. She planted a foot to launch, and Yunha shot forward like a lightning bolt through the air. While still carrying him, Yunha circulated mana and thought to herself, "Could the mold I absorbed really yield that much power?" Being carried and hurled through the air by her at terrifying speed, Si-hoon could only give in helplessly, and thought that in many respects the current situation had changed a great deal compared to before he went back in time. Meanwhile, Erica still stood patiently on the campus grounds waiting for him. "Lee Si-hoon still hasn't shown up. I need to deliver this invitation to him." On the Metallurgy Department's free forum at Babel Academy, an anonymous user posted a photo of Erica and questioned it. "Why is she here? Isn't she the combat department's top entrant?" A slew of comments followed. One person said she stood motionless in front of the metallurgy building for 3 hours, prompting many replies asking if she was waiting for Borsapa department's top entrant. Someone else recalled she once waited for him at the dorms. Was it really just that simple? If so, just call him and tell him to come down. Si-hoon had seen these things too, and wondered helplessly what it all meant. He reassured himself, whatever is truly important, they'll come find me again. Just then the classroom door opened. A middle-aged man entered and introduced himself. "Pleased to meet you all. Starting today, I'll be teaching tool comprehension class. My name is Ricaros Miles." He struck the door to draw everyone's attention and ordered, "First, all of you move to the training center. Whoever is last will be punished with 20 laps around the stadium. Begin." As soon as Ricaros finished, the students scrambled up and ran off. "Why are we suddenly being made to run like this?" Si-hoon tensed among the crowd. Wasn't this supposed to be a theory lesson? They kept chattering, "I don't know either, just run." Eventually, they all arrived at the place. Ricaros punished Si-hoon by making him run the full 20 laps. He nonchalantly ran while replying, "Yes, I'm running now." The people around them kept murmuring, "This guy's stamina is unbelievably poor. Who knows if he actually passed the intermediate forging test?" After a while, Ricaros stepped forward and called, "Everyone, pay attention." He explained seriously. Originally, the tool comprehension course was designed to teach the theory behind the construction of equipment. But due to recent fire sword hunts, we must change our training methods. There have been attacks targeting smiths capable of forging fire swords of hero rank and above. Those attackers are called fire sword hunters. Running and listening, Si-hoon thought to himself that even before he reversed time, it was still an unsolved case. He continued that no matter how solid your defensive systems are, ultimately the only thing that protects you is your body. Ricaros raised his voice to warn. Therefore, alongside studying tools in this class, you will also be taught skills to protect yourselves. The students replied in unison, "Yes, sir." Ricaros, pleased, said, "Good. Today our topic will be swords." Si-hoon kept reminding himself to be a little more careful this time. His feet kept moving. First priority to achieve that is to improve his own physical strength. Si-hoon's hand tightened slightly as he judged inwardly that although he made it himself, its effect was indeed extremely good. The system displayed information. This is a bracelet cast from inkstone that can absorb the wearer's mana to increase its weight accordingly. It will store and draw the owner's mana and allow activation of the ring burst skill, which controls gravity within a 1-meter radius around the user. Looking at the stat panel, he set goals for himself. The basic stats have each increased by about 5 points on average. Before the end of freshman year, he absolutely must make this body stronger at any cost. Only after a while did Ricaros turn and call to Si-hoon, "Stop running and come here quickly." He glanced down at his hand, the ring burst. He secretly assessed Si-hoon. "His condition seems better than I thought." Then Ricaros held the sword out toward him and suggested, "To see if you have the aptitude for swordsmanship, try swinging this sword." Si-hoon took it and watched for a moment. Moving nimbly might be a bit difficult due to the ink spider bracelet. He hesitated inwardly. It wasn't a fully honed technique, but should he try to apply that move? Finally, Si-hoon resolved and brought the sword down in a strike. Students outside snickered and mocked that he was too slow. He must be exhausted from the run. Yet his striking posture didn't look that bad. But Ricaros had a completely different assessment. "No, it's actually excellent. Your blade's path seems to have already defined the course it needs to take." He turned and remarked that the tempo was still too hasty. "It's best to correct that before continuing." Si-hoon's gaze sharpened in an instant. Ricaros's whole body seemed to tremble. The space seemed to wash out white in his vision. Ricaros's eyes froze. He stared in confusion at the sword pressed against his throat. Ricaros wondered to himself, did I just feel fear of a technical student so intense it produced a terrible hallucination? Then he hesitantly asked who had taught the student that sword style. Si-hoon smiled faintly, but inwardly he was completely bewildered. Why did that move work? The man had said it was a technique created on the spur of the moment in 10 minutes. Si-hoon recalled old memories. Guangsu scratched his ear and said, "See, I told you I'd repay you next time. Everyone goes through tight spots sometimes, so why are you panicking?" He kept begging, "Can I pay you with technique instead of money? I'll teach you that technique, so please stop, help me out." Back in the present, Si-hoon awkwardly scratched his head and lied. "I just often watch videos of other heroes' battles." Ricaros didn't fully believe him, but still smiled, and asked if he truly wanted formal sword training. He offered, "I'll prepare a letter of recommendation for you to join the body control class at Akarquif." That afternoon at the Akarquif Center, Si-hoon stood dazed in the crowd. Ma Guangsu stamped his foot in anger. "I've told you countless times I have nothing left to teach you." Yet Jake still wouldn't listen. "Please, sir, don't treat me like that." He was a retired S-rank hero and a regular customer. Ma Guangsu, nicknamed the Sword Breaker. Si-hoon could hardly believe that this drunk, gambling-obsessed man was a professor. On seeing Guangsu appear, someone asked who the other guy was. Si-hoon presented the letter and introduced himself. "I'm Lee Si-hoon, a freshman in metallurgy. I'm here on Professor Ricaros' recommendation." He looked surprised and asked Ricaros to confirm he had recommended him. Jake scrambled up to explain that the kid was this year's top entrant of the Borsapa department. He bluntly assessed that no matter how you looked at him, the kid seemed exceptionally ordinary. Then Guangsu challenged, "Hey kid, are you really that eager to learn from me?" The boy replied excitedly, "Yes, that's right." He pointed at Si-hoon and proposed then, "If you can beat that brat, I'll agree to take you on." He arranged a match for the two, just one round. Whoever lands a valid hit first wins. Guangsu waved his hand to signal the start of the match. No sooner had he finished than Jake lunged forward. Si-hoon remained rooted in place, gripping his sword tightly. Guangsu wondered if relaxing was a way to optimize mobility by suppressing all muscular power. If so, the basic counter would be grappling rather than striking directly. Meanwhile, Jake threw a blow. Guangsu sighed irritably. "That's why I hate show-offs who overthink strategy but never really engage properly. It's not interesting at all, what a bore," he complained. Then Jake dashed in and grabbed Si-hoon's belly. He suddenly ground his teeth. What demonic strength is this? Then Si-hoon told himself, but he activated the ring burst skill. Power from it flared into a blinding flash. Si-hoon successfully reversed the situation. He let out a painful hiss. Si-hoon's fist was now directly in front of his opponent's face. Blood dripped from his opponent's nose. Seeing this, he smiled faintly and asked, "Looks like I was a bit faster, wasn't I?" The space quickly fell silent. After a moment, Jack finally spoke. That attack just now was really. Before he could finish speaking, Guangsu ordered everyone to disperse. "Remember, I said I'd teach him only if he won." Si-hoon sat up and protested that since he lost to him, shouldn't the teacher be the one to teach him instead? He taunted, who would have thought the top student of Akarquif would be defeated by a Borsapa underling? Just hearing it sounds pathetic. Jake froze. Pathetic, why? Seeing that, Guangsu agreed, "That's fair. Perhaps I should straighten this idiot out a bit so he can fend for himself." And he turned excitedly to declare, "I'll arrange the time and send it to you. Be punctual." This made Jake extremely delighted. He bowed deeply and said, "Thank you very much, sir." Guangsu sighed irritably and waved his hand. "If you're done, you may leave." Then he turned to Si-hoon and said, "I still have something private to discuss with this kid." After the room was left with only the two of them, Guangsu asked him to reenact the sword technique he used against Ricaros. Si-hoon quickly replied, "Understood." Si-hoon watched him tensely. Then he lunged forward with the razor-sharp blade in his hand. However, in an instant, Guangsu knocked Si-hoon's sword aside. He stood dazed as Guangsu commented this was a move meant to fell an opponent at first sight. Guangsu coldly asserted the idea was decent, but the execution was crude. "Do you think a sword technique that reveals its weakness on the second use is normal?" He angrily warned that if anyone dared teach this and praise it as good, he'd break their hands and feet. Though Guangsu did not know he was the one who had taught it. Guangsu sighed and said, "Wait and see. I will build a complete body on top of this loose technical framework of yours." Si-hoon casually asked, "So I'm officially enrolled in the class then?" Guangsu, puzzled, confirmed of course. He felt reassured and took his leave, then said, "I'll be going now." After Si-hoon left, Guangsu glanced at him and remarked that the boy was rigid indeed. Outside, Si-hoon sighed in irritation, acting all lofty though it's just aftercare service. Just then Jake stepped up and greeted, "Hey, you there." Si-hoon replied in surprise, "You're still here." Jake produced a letter and said, "I have something I'd like to give you." Si-hoon, puzzled, asked what is this? Jake explained it was an invitation card to join Noblesse, a gathering of students from prestigious families. Si-hoon recognized it and wondered if Erica had intended to give it to him earlier. Jake spoke excitedly that there are many snobs there, but he thought it would be a good opportunity for Si-hoon. Si-hoon hesitated, unsure if he should accept such a thing lightly. Jake beamed and said, "Thanks to you I got into that class, so at least I should show my gratitude like this." Si-hoon smiled back and said thanks. Later on his way, he quietly reviewed the electives he'd registered so far, barrier structure and body control, and considered trying an elective from Borsippa as well. He was torn between alchemical cursicraft and enhancement. Distracted, he accidentally bumped into someone. Si-hoon stopped and apologized. "Excuse me." His gaze suddenly froze. It turned out a girl had grabbed his wrist and inspected it, asking, "Did you make this yourself?" Si-hoon flatly asserted, "And what if I did make it?" Then she offered, "Or how about I strengthen it for you?" The system quickly displayed a notification. A link with a target named Lee Claudel has been successfully established. Lee Claudel is someone capable of upgrading equipment by up to 2 ranks through enhancement. A genius among geniuses who forged legendary-grade gear. The one nicknamed the person who revolutionized the enhancement industry. Lee exclaimed in shock, "Inkstone, but rare grade." She kept studying it. "If I just add a few formulas here." "No, it's too good to stop at this level." Then Lee wearily held her head. "Oh no, how do I solve this dilemma?" Watching that, Si-hoon silently judged that she was unexpectedly strange. Then he asked calmly, "Is this equipment not good?" Lee quickly explained the problem. "The issue is there are too many things I want to do to it. It was forged from inkstone, but why is its compatibility astonishingly high? There are too many formulas I could apply, and I can't decide." Hearing that, Si-hoon placed something on the table and said, "If that's the case, it should be fine." Seeing her flustered, he reminded her, "There's more, look." Si-hoon carefully advised, "Moreover, it has a resonance effect, so pay attention to that." Lee, thrilled, asked, "Who exactly are you?" He nonchalantly introduced himself. "I'm Lee Si-hoon, a freshman in metallurgy and this year's top student of Borsippa." She was greatly surprised, exclaiming, "A freshman? That's incredible. I am a third-year student in the enhancement department." Just then someone approached and interrupted them. "I have something to discuss. Come with me for a moment." Si-hoon quickly recognized him as one of Erica's lackeys. Lee rose annoyed and snapped, "Can't you see we're talking right now?" He finally lowered his voice and said, "I want to resolve this smoothly, so please give me a minute." Si-hoon coldly replied, "If there's something, say it here." So he sighed and requested, "Apologize for your rude attitude toward Miss Erica. You dared to tear up the invitation she handed out in front of so many people." Si-hoon said in confusion, "But the lady herself asked me to tear it." His eyes immediately filled with anger as he snapped, "Sure, you have your reasons, but you shouldn't accept invitations from the Myers family." Si-hoon asked irritably, "Did Erica send you here?" He hurriedly denied it. "No, this was entirely my own idea." At that moment, Lee laughed mockingly. "Oh, believable." She bluntly exposed him. "Does anyone not know you are the trusted subordinate of the young master?" This made him furious. "How dare a worthless guy like you? Maybe you're deluding yourself into thinking you're someone special." He criticized Si-hoon. "But Babel isn't short on geniuses far above your level." However, Si-hoon paid no mind to reply. "Did you mean by that you were referring to yourself?" Si-hoon's words hit him like a bolt of lightning. The angry man shouted, "Shut up." Si-hoon watched the man's power flare, but still calmly reached out his hand. With one hand, he could hold back the pack of illusory beasts charging forward. A burst of mana suddenly dissipated. He remarked with admiration, "Just as I predicted, that wasn't created from mana alone. You used the sword phalanx as a medium to attack even though they were only illusions." This made him stammer in fear. "How could you possibly?" Si-hoon nonchalantly twirled the weapon in his hand and replied, "Who knows?" He laughed with excitement. "Sounds pretty delicious." At the same time, the system notified that the greedy iron binding mark had been officially activated. He cried out helplessly, "My 1 million is gone." Si-hoon smirked and said, "With a flavor this exquisite, no wonder you went mad for it." The system displayed info on the Ryu Yunha link. Greedy iron, supreme high-quality grade. An iron that generates thermal energy by devouring other metals. It corrodes metal on contact and absorbs their cores into itself, hunting and consuming iron to create mineral blood. Remaining durability 78%. The circle erupted, and in an instant Si-hoon lunged forward. He punched the man straight in the gut. The man crumpled to the ground. Si-hoon turned to call to Lee, "So, senior." He glanced at her and asked, "Is there any lecture in enhancement you think is worth recommending to me?" Lee's face flushed suddenly, and she began to speak. "Ancient enhancement. There's an exceptionally talented senior there named Lee Claudel. After leaving, the man clutched his stomach in agony. Damn it. He kept complaining that he couldn't believe a freshman had such astonishing reflexes. Just then Erica appeared ahead and said, "Excuse me, I'd like to borrow that sword phalanx to examine it a bit." He flinched and shouted, "Miss Erica, since when were you here?" Then the lackey respectfully handed it back to her. "Here, it's here, miss." Erica looked at the sword and warned, "You don't need to report this to my brother. As for the housemaster, I'll speak to him privately later." He awkwardly scratched his head and replied, "Yes, I understand." Erica silently assessed it and confirmed it was indeed a conductor-type item with an anti-theft sigil engraved on it. She felt a bit unsettled inside. Could he have independently devised a counterattack skill based on his magic and Professor Robert's teachings? Erica began to feel uncertain. Lee Si-hoon, his smithing talent might even surpass S rank. I must adjust my assessment of his magical compatibility up to rank A. The system suddenly popped up. A link with the entity named Erica Inao has been established. This made Si-hoon uneasy. What's going on? He began to wonder if she had been secretly watching when he fought that lackey. Si-hoon held the blades in his hands in frustration. At least he'd received fair compensation, though he was still short 10 blades. Left as is, it's a bit crude, but combined with the Black Spirit thread, it would certainly work well. He yawned and sighed anyway, putting that aside. I had been looking forward to Professor Kim In-cheol's class, yet today we only heard dull theory I'd already memorized. Then In-cheol spoke seriously. That explanation is enough, now let's move on to the main part. He picked up the item on the table and explained that even if you use the exact same metal, its shape will change completely depending on how you arrange the distribution of mana. A stone unexpectedly appeared along with In-cheol's words. A stone appeared unexpectedly with In-cheol's words. The ability to apply this metal deformation technique is the decisive factor in a weapon's versatility. He placed several different stones on the table. Then, In-cheol transformed them back into their original iron ingots and affirmed, "Therefore, if you choose the path of a smith, you must perfectly grasp the potential of the metal you are working with." In-cheol posed the task. "In today's lesson, we will practice deformation techniques on these iron bars." He had someone hand out the stones and gave the requirement. First, use the mana flow to create a scratch about 3 cm deep at the center of the ingot. This item has been tuned to react extremely sensitively to deformation, so you must work very carefully. Si-hoon inwardly judged that perhaps at last the professor didn't completely dismiss magic-based forging. In-cheol announced crisply, "Your time limit is 10 minutes. You may begin now." The students were baffled, clutching their iron bars and complaining, "Why did this happen to me? It won't return to its original shape." Just then 2 people stepped forward. Si-hoon said casually, "I'm finished." Hands glanced at him and reported, "I'm done, sir." In-cheol praised satisfactorily, "Very good. You 2 may move on to the next training stage." Then he introduced another problem. "We'll perform a different arrangement pattern as a model. You should try applying it." Hands looked at Si-hoon confidently. "Our speed and level of finish are about the same. This time I'm sure I'll win." In-cheol continued explaining, "Next will be the arrangement according to this diagram." He hurriedly executed it with sky-high confidence. His chance had come. Hands cheerfully thought to himself he'd complete it perfectly and impress everyone. But after he finished, In-cheol requested, "Hands Barmut, try returning that ingot to its original state." Hands immediately froze and asked, "Sir, what did you say?" Only when asked to do it did he become flustered. How did this end up like this? Hands helplessly realized the arrangement of mana flows had been completely destroyed. Seeing this, In-cheol spoke up. "That ingot couldn't withstand the deformation you performed. In other words, that proves your handling method was flawed from the very first step." He asked again in confusion, "But you clearly did exactly what the professor instructed." He lowered his head and explained that what he emphasized earlier was that you must fully understand the inherent potential of the metal. In-cheol kept criticizing. "If you cannot restore the affected mana structure, it's no longer deformation but severe degradation of the equipment. It becomes a major variable affecting quality and performance, so you must study this part carefully in the future." Hearing this, Hands bowed his head and replied he would remember the lesson well. Then he glanced at Si-hoon, wondering whether that guy truly grasped the key point. Finally, he concluded that no, maybe Si-hoon just got lucky while spacing out. However, immediately afterward Si-hoon succeeded. It really worked. He returned the ingot to its original form. This left the students all unsettled. Didn't the professor just say that method wasn't feasible? It couldn't be possible, Eve. In-cheol was perplexed. "Student Lee Si-hoon, could you kindly demonstrate the deformation technique you just used once more for me?" Si-hoon inwardly thought he'd accidentally caused the professor to misunderstand. He awkwardly explained that it was feasible only because these irons had been specially adjusted for students. If it were a standard ingot, it would certainly never work. Watching everything unfold, Inchial realized the truth. It worked thanks to the sensitivity of these specially tuned iron ingots. He pondered thoughtfully. He hadn't expected that even he had overlooked that crucial detail. A conqueror of the pinnacle and also the greatest smith, St. Fire Lee Kent's. He created it during his years as an S-rank hero and for decades since then. No one has been able to refute it. The deformation formula is regarded as the core truth of all smiths and steelcraft. Thinking of that, Inchial hesitated. Surely he couldn't have found another method. Could I really believe that's possible for this kid? Si-hoon turned away, inwardly thinking if the professor realizes it again this time. That will be 2 times in a row. Night was falling outside. Inchial announced, "Class is over for today, you may take a break." He stopped and asked, "Student Lee Si-hoon, can you stay behind for a moment?" Si-hoon replied, "Yes, sir, what is it?" Inchial produced an item and said, "This is a welcome gift for your enrollment because you helped me a great deal with the move to Babel." The system also displayed information. Bloodfire Ember, rare high-quality ore containing the essence of deep crimson flame. It has a special ability used to melt mixed ores into liquid form. Si-hoon hesitated and asked what it was. Inchial answered that if he could absorb the essence from this ember, he would permanently augment his deep crimson flame. He had prepared it painstakingly after hearing Si-hoon could control bloodfire. He nodded happily and said, "Thank you, Professor. This gift will surely be a tremendous help to me." Inchial suddenly asked another question. "I want to know if you intend to enroll in the elective course I teach." He calmly replied, "Are you referring to the Basic Equipment Studies course?" This surprised Inchial, "So you already know about that class." Si-hoon confirmed nonchalantly, "Yes, I know." He privately judged it was one of the classes Babel invested the most budget in. Si-hoon felt a bit anxious. What should I do? Before the time rewind, I had never heard the name Kim Inchial, so the professor's fate might not have been good. However, now he was a professor, receiving a great deal of attention. Then Si-hoon cheerfully said he decided to take the course. Inchial asked with concern if he was all right, nodding Si-hoon had already signed up for many electives. Si-hoon calmly explained that even with this added it would only be his 4th elective. Inchial had no objection and shook Si-hoon's hand, expressing he looked forward to working with him. Si-hoon politely replied likewise. At the same time, the system displayed a notification extracting a link from the subject Kim Inchial. The link to creator Lee Si-hoon was now at level 1. Link Kim Inchial, high-rank fire-bearing iron, medium-low quality. A metal containing internal conflagration with properties similar to wood in its ability to hold flame inside. Si-hoon mused that if someone can extract metal from another person's body, that implies they could also forge and temper the human body itself. When multiple mana attributes coexist within one body, they cause conflicts with each other. Because this is extremely dangerous for a smith who requires absolute precision, the unwritten rule is to use only the single attribute best suited to one's talent. However, I am an entirely different case. The innate mana used to suppress temperature is gradually being depleted appropriately. When the body becomes depleted of mana buffers, it will begin to attract the essence of the deep crimson flame into itself. What I need to do as a smith is establish a dedicated mana circuit for the deep crimson flame within my own body. After a while, Si-hoon exhaled in relief. He understood that. Only then could he perform forging and casting within himself. The system notified, "Your mana attribute has strengthened from Bloodfire F to Bloodfire E+." A series of messages followed. "You have learned the S-rank skill, Spirit Forging Magic. The body is the most primitive material a smith can polish. When the internal mana channels are honed, physical abilities increase and strength is enhanced." All base stats rose noticeably due to the skill. Lee Si-hoon, Strength D15, Endurance D100, Mana D19, Speed E87. Si-hoon gritted his teeth, thinking Spirit Forging Magic. He recalled how in his past life he had struggled when Lee asked, "You already have the materials in hand. Are you going to give up without even trying to process them?" She had smiled and teased, "You're not an idiot. Are you really going to passively accept that?" Back in the present, he smiled in satisfaction and resolved, "Yes, I must fully exploit everything I can use, and whether the opponent is ally or enemy, this time I will not let myself regret anything." In a large stone-laid hall, a voice announced, "Today we will finish the items you crafted in recent lessons, because these completed products are scheduled to be supplied both inside and outside the academy." The red-haired fellow stood with his hands on his hips and declared that today's results would determine the outcome of the first term. "So give it your all now so you won't regret it later." Understood. Everyone shouted in unison, yes, sir. Si-hoon watched the iron bar in his hand and thought, everything is truly a mess. My current body can't keep up with the reflexes, so many details are off. One hand held the hammer, as he thought this is no longer a time to be leisurely. Flames erupted, waves of fire slicing straight through the area. A pot of boiling water steamed. Si-hoon held the long bar and silently observed. This result should be acceptable, but he grew anxious, thinking with the remaining time finishing the others will be extremely difficult. If I only do average work, I might get extra budget support. He placed it on the grindstone, but ultimately pouring his heart into creating at least one truly quality piece was the right choice. His hands deftly ground the iron bar. He stood there utterly focused. That sound roiled inside Si-hoon's head, a sound like the apocalypse approaching. His gaze dropped. Whenever he heard that distinctive sound, he produced exceptional items. All concentration funneled into it with the thought that this was not merely momentary sharpness, but a blade etched into its very being. Lights flashed below called. White radiance? The information became clearer. The white radiance longsword was finally completed. A great smith expresses his will through the basics. The craft of a master who maximizes a material's potential to forge a new blade is truly top tier. A notification appeared. You have acquired the skill White Radiance Flow C. 2 gleaming swords appeared with their details. White Radiance Longsword, rare rank, high quality. This longsword possesses a pure white blade, exquisitely honed and combined with mana arrangement to be both durable and exceptionally sharp. A masterpiece by an outstanding smith. Its cutting power increases when mana is channeled into it. Si-hoon held the freshly crafted weapon and exhaled, thinking that considering he only used ordinary iron, this result was acceptable. He hoped that by looking at this weapon, the skills from before the time rewind would gradually recover, even if only a little. The two knights behind him held their swords and whimpered in turn, I really hate this feeling. Maybe I should consider dropping out. The next Saturday morning, the red-haired guy was sitting in a cafe intently looking at his phone. A voice spoke up. I didn't expect you'd want to witness my enhancement technique. Si-hoon looked around as they walked. Well, I'm actually curious about your basic techniques too. There seem to be a lot of people here. Lee, walking beside him, was also watching and said, don't worry, my workshop is in a much quieter area. The two of them headed toward a peaceful farm area and asked in turn, isn't this place a bit far? Did you really think we'd easily get to see your technique up close? She pulled him into the Acklecuff Metalworks shop. This is the place. And she strode in calling out loudly, ma'am. Her voice echoed, I'm here. Helena, sitting inside, wiggled her little finger at her ear and grimaced. I'm not deaf. You don't need to shout like that. Si-hoon, walking behind, seemed annoyed and asked, who's the kid with her boyfriend? Lee stood before him and replied, of course not. He broke into a small smile as she spoke. He's the top entrant of the Borsapa department this year. The woman answered, Babel must be in decline to accept someone who looks so frail. Then Helena pushed up from the table and said, my name is Helena. Si-hoon spoke up. I'm Lee Si-hoon, a first-year metallurgy student. She seemed exasperated. Enough chit-chat, get to work. This week's backlog is huge because of you freshmen. Lee glanced away and sighed, yes, I know. She pointed to the room in the back. The entrance to the forge workshop is this way. Looking at the items in the room made Si-hoon think that her skills were deeper than he had imagined. He followed, observing carefully and wondering why someone like her would run a metalworks shop here. She walked ahead holding various items and noted that work had indeed piled up. A colorful tray sat on the table. This was the enhancement palette, and nearby were powders ground from magic stones. He stood with his arms crossed, glancing and thinking he knew the usual standard was 8 colors, but she used them far more diversely. He then asked, is your job restoring damaged enhancement formulas with these? Lee picked up a paintbrush and said, exactly. One hand held a pan, while the other dipped the brush into the palette. That way I can both earn money and freely perform enhancements without worrying about material costs. The painted strokes shimmered with color. An ordinary pan in her hands became something impressive. Si-hoon stood there quietly observing, thinking, I came here because she seemed to be stuck in her work. He recalled a memory of someone telling him that a has-been drags failures into every exam and couldn't even keep the top student title in their department. The image of Lee focused with brush and pan sparked thoughts in him. Seeing it in person, he believed he had found the cause and the solution to her stagnation. With those thoughts, he turned and walked away. Being able to immerse oneself in work like that is a talent. His hands in his pockets, he stood before a wooden table. An item on the table caught Si-hoon's eye. This would resonate with the mana arrangement to produce a special effect. He leaned down to inspect it. After such a long time before carving white radiance again, my hands are getting itchy. Helena behind him saw it and said, try using it. She frowned from behind and said, of course, if you have the capability to do it, pick any piece from that pile. He glanced back in surprise, feeling as if she were deliberately ordering him around. He turned and looked. If I'm allowed to use a grindstone of that special quality, I definitely have to try it once. His gaze fixed straight on it. His hand closed around its handle. She stood behind, arms crossed, watching. Are you really going to work on that piece? Si-hoon excitedly touched the blade. Indeed, judging by the even wear and the unwarped tang, this was a knife made by someone who truly understood blade use. He stood at the table holding the grindstone, thinking that this stone had mana grains compressed most evenly. Using it could handle even sharpening the blade to the ultimate edge. His hand moved with practiced gentleness as he set the knife on the grinding stone. Helena, standing behind, harbored a big question. Is that kid really a freshman who just enrolled this year? Lee behind excitedly called out, startling her. It's finished. Only then did she startle and realize, oh, ma'am, when did you get here? She didn't turn to look. I don't know that girl's. Lee stepped up beside her and said, you purposely looked for faults in a junior. But in the end, he taught you a lesson, didn't he? Helena shoved her hard to the back with her hand, angry. Shut up, will you? She looked toward Si-hoon, hesitating, and asked, have you finished all the work? He smiled and replied, this is the best I can do right now. Next time I'll definitely do better. Helena then swung the sword down. All right, then both of you get home quickly. Lee linked her arm with his and walked out, glancing back. She's just being grumpy for no reason. Let's go. Inside, she stood with her hands on her hips where he had just worked. Suddenly, a well-dressed man in a suit knocked loudly on the door. Miss, are you forging things? Helena peered out, frowning. Keep it down. He hurriedly scratched his head, embarrassed. The order backlog is huge. What about the kitchen knife? His somewhat agitated words spilled out. When will you give up that restaurant job? You're supposed to be a fighting department professor. She snapped back angrily, stop nagging about other people's hobbies. He stepped in and picked up the knife on the table. Ah, here it is. Suddenly, he sensed something unusual. He frowned and looked back. Miss, did you sharpen this while drinking? She stood with arms crossed and head down. I did not. He continued, could this be the work of those new close assistants lately? Their skill must have improved dramatically. Helena bowed her head and closed her eyes. A freshman. He turned, unbelieving. What? Her eyes opened, and she replied. A new freshman who just enrolled this year was the one who ground it. Recalling the image of Si-hoon from that remark, who on earth is that kid? Si-hoon stepped outside and asked, is that old woman at the metalworks a former metallurgy instructor? Lee, strolling beside him, answered, yes. I've heard she retired 5 years ago and returned to Akelcuff to open this shop. He glanced down at her. Could there be something behind that? She glanced back. I'm not sure, probably nothing too unusual. The academy image appeared as she told it. In the past 5 years, quite a few professors have left the metallurgy department. He looked over and replied, is that so? Si-hoon kept thinking that if this place is set to become Babel's weakest department in the future, it's a story he can't ignore. Lee beside him raised a hand to her chest. More importantly, what do you think of my enhancement technique? He startled and looked down at her. The basics are certainly unimpeachable. It's pretty solid. Her face swelled with pride. Oh, it's no big deal. He suddenly lost some enthusiasm and said, however, your thinking is still too narrow. The atmosphere darkened as Lee jumped forward to face him. What did you just say? Si-hoon pointed straight at her. You've come up with better options, but don't dare to apply them. She stammered back. How could you tell that? Lee fell into silence, bowing her head to the critique. If you don't know something, you can learn it, but if you know and still won't act, that's the real problem. A craftsman's imagination is their weapon and gift, yet you're holding yours back. Everything shattered inside her, as if he were saying, it's me. You think I do these things just because I don't understand them. Si-hoon winked, sighed, and rummaged for something in his clothes. Then he drew out a sword, surprising her. I have other plans so I can't perform for long. Watch closely. He produced a stone underwater as an example. Suppose someone asked you to place a stone beneath the surface. Creating the stone and dropping it is the smith's job. The image fades. While depicting the image of that sinking stone on the water is the art of enhancement. That's why enhancement always carries the nature of dreams. A sword appeared with red lights swirling around the bloodfare. The sword flew before her in surprise, with powers swirling around it, white radiant swordsmanship. The powerful image manifested. Don't just affect the outer shell, imbue the enhancement deep into the weapon's core. He studied the knife in his hand and the energies around it. If one layer isn't strong enough, split them into multiple tiers. Si-hoon forcefully pushed it down. As she executed it that way, he threw it hard backward. It stuck straight into the ground, plunging down. Everything seemed to pause along that power line as he looked down, pondering seriously. I can't say this is a standard enhancement technique, but if it's Lee, seeing her with her hand at her chin reinforced his thought. Geniuses like her usually find their way even while hesitating. Suddenly Lee panicked and pointed back. Junior, lend me that item for a moment. Please let me borrow it. She stepped down there and swung Si-hoon like a swing. I promise I'll perfect it and return it. Please, please. You're sweating at the nape of your neck bringing that item out. I don't mind, but if you're taking it, take this one too. She jumped up with delight as if she'd received love. Thank you so much, I love you to death. She vanished, leaving him standing there alone. Si-hoon sighed with relief as a notification announced a link setup in progress from the subject Lee Claudel. The link level with creator Lee Si-hoon is now at rank 1. He also spoke up. That girl really is childish. Standing in the crowded campus, Si-hoon looked around and thought, after all, today I finally have a chance to meet one of those 3 feral hounds. Every youthful duel between the mad hound and the radiance-destroying demon god. He remembered Erica trailing behind, and it made him ponder, but more importantly, he then asked, "What are you doing?" She whispered creepily, "I'm just following you." He replied indifferently, "So if I told you to go elsewhere now, would you go?" She stepped up to stand level with him. "I'd go because I can observe you from afar." Si-hoon glanced back, sighed, and thought, I figured she'd do that. All right, he stepped in. Come on, let's go inside. An item like frozen snow appeared with a description. Linked social pact of Erica and now. Tier. Rare. Quality. Low is normal. An artificial ore infused with mana, refined to regulate internal mana chaos when mixed with other minerals. Another magic stone appeared with the notice. Complex burst-link block of Lee Claudel. Tier. Rare. Quality. Supreme. A sharp-hued composite ore with many blended colors, serving as an excellent amplifier to maximize the potential of hybrid materials. On the giant stadium screen Lan Fang appeared adorably, warmly welcoming the new students of Babel Academy to the famed attraction of the martial arena. I extend my highest greetings to all of you in this ranked match. She posed and winked on the screen. I'm the youngest professor in the martial arts department and will be today's commentator. My name is Lan Fang. Under the spotlight, her voice continued, Then let's not keep you waiting. Let's introduce today's fighters. The tall silhouette of a woman appeared under the lights. First, look this way. The top graduate of the 4th year from the Akarquif region, and the future heir of the Myers family, renowned for producing S-class heroes. She swept her golden hair back with her hand. A perfect superhuman who has repeatedly broken records and held the arena's top spot for 3 years. She is currently an active A-rank hero and our champion. The pretty face of this girl was revealed. Also the sacred swordsman, who finally conquered the highest peak of the hero tower, Arya Myers. Loud sounds erupted while above. Si-hoon and Erica stood with arms crossed looking down. Sis, take me with you, Arya, shines so bright, accompanied Fang's commentary, and the first player to dare challenge today's champion. Light focused on a man with a long sword on his back, an intangible cultural heritage of Korea, heir to the flame-wheel destruction spear technique, top graduate of the 3rd year in the spear arts department, and a promising candidate for the arena's top 10. Si-hoon looked down and thought, so we've finally crossed paths. The man stood there exuding strength. The mad hound, Fang loudly announced his name. Yom Seong-ha. Blades of swordfire flashed, then halted just above the ground. Arya on the other side skillfully maneuvered her sword. She delivered a strike that made him leap backward. He gritted his teeth and forced himself on. His hand clenched the wooden rail beside him. Arya's gaze flashed with menace. Then flames spiraled in circles around her, as if they intended to strike Seong-ha directly. This made Si-hoon, standing above, have to think. Even accounting for his young age, he still hasn't reached the required standard. Could it be he hasn't received support befitting the title of heir of the flame-wheel destruction spear? Seong-ha's hand moved back into a ready stance. There were many things that bothered him, but the biggest obstacle was the gear he was using. But he threw it aside and prepared to lunge. A long, sharp blade slashed, grazing his throat. Seong-ha looked bewildered at the blade at his throat. Then he fell silent. I've lost. Arya placed her sword down cheerfully. You've worked hard. The match is officially over. The ultimate victor is Arya Myers. The two of them stood on the same platform. Fang, mic in hand, continued his duty. We'll now proceed with interviews for both fighters as planned. But student Yom Seong-ha had to leave early due to an unexpected matter. She covered her mouth and laughed. Facing a 9th ranker immediately afterward was truly beyond me. Seong-ha quietly departed as all lights turned to Arya. Or shall I fill this gap with a live Q&A with myself? The crowd up there is enthusiastic. Let's do it. Si-hoon up there winked and thought the guy looked pretty annoyed. Suddenly he stood, making Erica turn. Are you going to leave before the match is over? He put his hands in his pockets and replied, yeah, I'm not that into that fighting style. He walked off while saying, look at her. Standing there seems anxious. Erica turned with some worry, thinking it's a relief you didn't come to see your brother. But why is he so angry like that? Suddenly a voice spoke beside her. An interesting freshman, huh? Since when did Arya stand there looking back? The orange eyes looked back hopefully. Perhaps I found someone like that. Seong-ha sat meditating in the park area near the martial arena. Si-hoon quietly approached thinking Yom Seong-ha is still alive and fairly healthy. Seong-ha recalled each flashy strike he had unleashed. Though his temperament was somewhat canine, he remained a core member of the Suicide Squad and was also the one who ultimately sacrificed his life to destroy the god of Annihilation's transformation. He stood behind him thinking that since he hadn't become too corrupted, perhaps this time I'd collect the link stones more easily. Seong-ha frowned and bowed his head. You were watching the sparring match just now, weren't you? Si-hoon, hands in pockets, replied, that's right, I watched a bit. His head tilted back slightly. Your finding me here proves your skill isn't mediocre. Seong-ha turned and glared. It's you again? Why is the top graduate of Borsipa's department showing up here? He stood there worried, wondering why he was so hostile, then spoke. I came hoping we could discuss something. Then he turned back to the start. Get out of my sight. Si-hoon slowly stepped forward. This will truly benefit you, senior. Only for him to squat and reply, maybe you still don't understand, so I'll say this once. I utterly despise the weak. Seong-ha stood up, especially those who can't do anything for their family, and those who delude themselves that their petty tricks are on par with me, so, whatever you want to say, go back. A line that left him stunned. Low-class blacksmith, remembering what Seong-ha used to do. Go back to your workshop and forge gear, know your limits and stay in your place. This made him think little of it. Compared to when he was dubbed the Mad Dog, he actually seems rather polite now. Si-hoon was practicing magic in his hand, while thinking that with that attitude, words definitely won't resolve anything. Seong-ha glanced back too. It seemed he was determined not to stop. He stepped up to where Si-hoon was casting and said, I also want to tell you something. What came next left him dumbfounded. The history of the Flame Wheel Destruction Spear will be ended by your own hands. So Seong-ha dashed forward at full speed. His hands clenched, releasing his power. His punch launched, but Si-hoon blocked it. A notification appeared as he was knocked back. The Greedy Slaughter link mark was officially activated. He frowned in confusion, thinking, did he just nullify one of my mana-enhanced punches? Flames curled around Seong-ha as he focused on him. No wonder he was chosen as top of the department. Perhaps he finally has the qualifications to speak with me. His attitude grew more fierce, yet the orbit of the destructive flame mana still lingered. This is the true power of the Flame Wheel Destruction Spear. Everything ends here. They flew straight at each other, as Si-hoon formed a shield to hurl fire at Seong-ha. Smoke billowed and obscured him. Then he slowly emerged from the smoke. Far off he was surprised. What? Why can those flames, which should only respond to my mana, be held in his hand? Something terrifying was approaching. Had he split and stolen them? Suddenly a burst of flames shot past his neck. He looked ahead, cursing that bastard. Seong-ha, poised with his violet powers, made him think he was about to go mad and lose control. The image of a pink-haired man carrying a weapon at the gate of the disaster at How Hua sect probably erupted because of this hot-headed nature. A punch from the man was about to be thrown. It came precisely as the victim thought the Greedy Slaughter effect would wear off, and his endurance had reached its limit. As the fist neared Si-hoon's face, the Greedy Slaughter duration expired. His body could no longer hold on. They fell as if gravity had vanished from above. At the same time, he grasped Seong-ha's punch in full, surprising him. But no, it was Jake forcing his way in to take the blow, startling him. Jake Myers. He then spoke, do you know this top graduate of Borsipa? Stammering, the other replied, yes, sort of. We know each other. Then he pulled his hand back and moved to a quieter spot. Leave this place immediately. Jake awkwardly shouted, yes, sir. Then turned to him and said, Si-hoon, let's go. He glanced at him, who turned pale with fear. Remember what I said. Don't utter those weird words again and get out of here quickly. Over there, Seong-ha stood alone, thinking that he had lost control of his emotions and thrown a punch. He nearly stained the honor of the Flame Wheel Destruction Spear and brought disaster upon his master. His gaze dropped. On the street, Jake walked ahead of him. What the hell were you thinking, daring to pick a fight with that senior? If I hadn't stopped you in time, you might have been killed. Si-hoon bowed his head and sighed in relief. No way, it's not that simple. The one beside him fretted. What did you say? A notification appeared before him. A link with the target Yom Seong-ha had been successfully established. He spoke. I was only issuing a threat to him earlier, but thoughts also surfaced. Next step is to extract the link stone. thinking of Seong-ha's fierce fighting, yet the person I once knew was exactly the mad dog Yom Seong-ha. If he's still weak like this, the effectiveness of the link stone might be altered. I need to calculate how to raise the link level with Yom Seong-ha. Then he looked at Jake, thinking this guy might actually be useful. He asked as well, is your hand injured? Jake brightly pointed to the wound in his palm. It's fine, my hands are pretty tough. Si-hoon, walking beside him, glanced and thought, his hands tough. How ridiculous, he turned, and more importantly, he reached out a hand in gesture. What did you say about my sister at the front gate? He was somewhat surprised. You mean Arya Myers? Jake answered, yes. He replied, it's nothing serious, it's just that I find her a bit arrogant. Jake clutched his head in terror. What? No wonder she kept pestering me with all those questions about you. Si-hoon stood there thinking of Arya. She's definitely started to notice you, Si-hoon said coldly, recalling the woman's figure. My sister seems to have begun paying attention to you. The sister mentioned Arya was smiling. He sighed helplessly. How did she hear that in such a noisy crowd? She's really sharp-eared. Jake tried to advise, please speak quietly next time. My sister is an A-rank hero. Si-hoon put his hands in his pockets and teased. Honestly, if it's mere concern, I'm happy to accept it. Looking at Jake tearing his hair out in frustration, he thought that Yom Seong-ha's biggest worry is probably defeating Arya. If I draw the attention of her rival, my influence will naturally rise. He put on a bored face and sighed. Don't underestimate that. You don't understand what my sister truly is. Before he could finish, Si-hoon interjected bluntly. A petty and scheming little man, right? Jake jumped and reflexively glanced around. Maybe you shouldn't use such harsh words. Suddenly his face grew solemn. Si-hoon fell silent upon hearing the question. Why do you hold such animosity toward my sister? The girl in armor with golden hair held a powerful black sword. The sword Saint Arya Myers. She stood like an empress, facing the monsters directly. It was once a soulless, faded sword. Beneath the pitch-black moon, Arya raised her wings and lifted that sword high. One day the sword Saint suddenly vanished without a trace, and the one who emerged afterward had turned the remains of a demon god into a weapon of his own. The annihilation demon god, Si-hoon in the shadows, merely gave a faint smile. Just looking at her face is trouble. Then he strolled off, waving a perfunctory farewell. I'm leaving now. Jake stood dumbfounded in the back, still not understanding what had happened. He suddenly noticed a sound from his phone. On his phone screen, he received a message from his sister, Arya Myers. It said, it seems you've just made a very interesting friend. Tell me everything later. And when he finished reading, he gasped. Did she mean I'm now forced to act as a bridge between them? Suddenly his eyes froze and went pale. Arya sent the message with a sly implication. Your petty and scheming sister asked you for a favor. Jake stood dazed on the street reading the message alone. Damn it. Cut to the next morning, in a lecture hall at Babel Academy. Si-hoon sat in class, hand on his shoulder from the ache. Did I go too far confronting Yom Seong-ha yesterday? Hans, seated in the front, murmured that the schedule for the exchange session would be set soon. Reese barreled into the class on a tiny vehicle, brandishing his staff and shouting for order. He stepped before the class, staff raised, and launched into an introduction. My name is Reese Dova. I'll be teaching your major courses for the next 2 weeks, focusing on attribute refinement. The students in the room turned pale at the sight of him, sharing the same thought, that famed professor known as a madman, while Reese remained calm and spoke seriously. Before we begin, I have an announcement. You must seize this opportunity and submit your homework to me by next Thursday. First is David. David, startled at his name, replied, yes, sir, present. Reese, tiny as he was, sat comfortably on his vehicle with a sheet of paper. The last name on the list was Lee Si-hoon. He stood up when his name was called. Hans glanced down and wondered aloud how much money he would get. The student beside him thought the amount would be 3 times his own share. Reese suddenly announced crisply that Si-hoon's budget had not yet been officially disclosed. Hearing this, he jumped in surprise. Pardon, what did you say? He had deliberately worn his bangs down to cover his eyes because people kept mocking his hairstyle as outdated and ugly. Reese, still calm, stroked his white beard and explained that because the completion level of the piece he submitted created an extreme contrast far exceeding expectations, the school decided to include it in the public auction for second-year students this Wednesday. He continued explaining the reason. We'll base your budget on the final auction price, so be patient a little longer. Si-hoon stood there frowning thoughtfully. Could this be Vice Principal Michael's scheme, intervening to handle it separately? The matter still nagged at him, but on reflection, if anything shady were happening, Professor Kim In-cheol would have stepped in to stop it earlier. He then replied to Reese, I understand the situation clearly, sir. Reese, not looking frightening, snapped his fingers to begin the next lecture. Today's topic is excess mana. An outstanding student has volunteered to assist me in this intensive practical session. Please come in. The student was Seong-ha. He appeared and entered the class as Reese introduced him to everyone. This is my temporary teaching assistant, Yom Seong-ha, a third-year commerce major at AKRQUS. A student next to Si-hoon exclaimed in surprise, "Why is that renowned senior suddenly here?" The class seemed as excited as if they'd seen a beautiful woman. Yom Seong-ha stood beside the professor, and Reese continued the lecture. Introductions are enough. Let's grasp the basic concepts before moving to practice. The circular specimens radiating mana mentioned in weapon crafting. The forms of excess mana are mainly divided into two types. The first is the basic energy charging form. The second type is an independent form that can generate mana on its own or absorb it from the surrounding atmosphere. Both have their pros and cons, but the independent type is far more difficult. Reese lectured sternly. The reason is that there is no fixed standard for creating a mana core. It changes depending on the materials, technique, and the creator's own mana source. He looked to Yom Seong-ha beside him and continued. So you'll all begin with the energy charging type first. Assistant, please step up. His hand began to clench and tense, emitting a red mana. Streams of red mana started to appear in the classroom space. Fire-aligned power is prone to erupt, making it hard to become usable excess mana. He formed two red mana streams that met into an arch. However, if one can restrain that nature, it reveals excellent storage capability. Reese continued explaining the simulation Seong-ha created. A prime example is the technique my assistant is demonstrating now. The flame wheel destruction spear. Hands froze in shock watching the display. Can someone control fire mana to that degree? The student next to him was equally astonished. Even controlling a forge is beyond me. Reese raised a device from the lectern. Since we're lucky to have such a talented assistant, we must make the most of it. Submit your assignments by next Thursday. The whiteboard listed his requirements clearly. The topic is excess fire mana in the energy charging form with the motif of a wheel of fire. He reminded them carefully that they could be creative as long as they kept to the theme. Reese sat on his little vehicle excitedly spinning his staff. Now let's move quickly to the refining room, and don't forget to change into your gear. After he left, only Yom Seong-ha remained standing there. The other students suddenly rose. This is our chance. Hans and a few others nursed the same thought. A golden opportunity to speak with Senior Yom Seong-ha. Excited, he stepped forward to address him. "Hello, Senior." He looked polite and was about to introduce himself. "I'm Hans," when a gloomy aura emanated from around Yom Seong-ha. "Go away at once." Hans didn't dare linger and slunk away dejectedly. Yes, the classroom atmosphere turned gloomy. Seong-ha stood motionless with a cold expression, and his eyes closed. Those icy eyes suddenly opened and looked in a direction. As Si-hoon, not paying attention, was idly preparing to leave the classroom, Seong-ha spoke up. "Lee Si-hoon," he called, "stop. What do you know about me?" A muscular man's body radiated a swirling red mana. "I heard the mastery of the flame wheel destruction spear is determined by the number of wheels. Lee Won-ryang, current head of the Fire Blossom sect and an rank hero, has reached 8 wheels. Si-hoon walked more slowly toward the door and answered him. "Because the 3 wheels you just formed were effortless. If done correctly, you could maintain 6 wheels simultaneously." Yom Seong-ha quickly stepped after him and called out, "Wait, so what of it?" Si-hoon suddenly spoke, causing him to freeze. "You've touched the 7th wheel before, haven't you?" He casually put his hands in his pockets and said, "But one day you won't be able to hold it anymore." Seong-ha trembled with anger as he watched Si-hoon's back. "How did he know that when I haven't even reported it to my master?" His face turned icy and his words grew cold. "You see, I have some talent in controlling fire, but watching the flames you wield makes me feel something is off. You can't detonate the remaining surplus energy cleanly. Or rather, you're letting it scatter chaotically." Seong-ha stepped closer and asked bluntly, "Do you know why that is?" His face went blank, his eyes widening as he heard, "I have a few guesses myself, but I don't see any need to tell you." Yom Seong-ha stared, uttering, "What?" He stood behind, tightening the arm at his side. "State your demands." Si-hoon didn't hesitate and raised one forefinger. "First, you must pay an appropriate price for any advice and help I give." 2 fingers appeared on his hand. "Second, when facing difficult decisions, you must consult me." As soon as Si-hoon finished speaking, he started walking. "Tell me your decision before we step into the refining room." Yom Seong-ha leaned back and, without hesitation or further thought, answered, "I agree." His voice turned serious with a condition. "Only if you can prove it." Time shifted to the afternoon at the forge. In this area, several people in identical uniforms were working. Si-hoon focused on picking up an item and placing it into the hot furnace. Was he crafting without even sketching a draft? Did he mean he wouldn't test the selected stones before putting them in the kiln? Fire ore and shadow ore were mixed at a ratio of 7-3. Two people approached his busy back and whispered, "What if stuffing them in like that causes all the attribute mana to dissipate? Why is the department top student doing something so reckless?" His gaze didn't waver. He stayed focused on his calculations. The temperature was raised until the attribute mana began to seep out. Si-hoon quickly removed his glove and thrust his bare hand into the flames, simultaneously manipulating the flame mana to hold that attribute in place. This was the heat replacement technique. Reese broke out in a cold sweat watching from outside. He used heat replacement at this stage. So Professor Kim In-cheol accepted the public auction submission for this reason. A faint smile touched the corner of Si-hoon's mouth. Under ordinary eyes, it might look like a simple heat replacement. But to Yom Seong-ha, an entirely different scene must be unfolding. At another moment, he silently opened his eyes wide. Watch carefully. A black shoe stepped onto the pedal, pressing the toe down. A red source of fire mana mixed with a hint of black erupted. The fire mana flowing outward was drawn inward, while the shadow mana digging inward was pushed outward. In this way, the balance between the two opposing mana streams was maintained, forming a perfect circle. Seong-ha stood with his arms crossed, appearing focused yet somehow disappointed. "Is that all?" Si-hoon's pupils spun like fire wheels. "My second mana attribute was forbidden, because it was believed to hinder the flame wheel destruction spear." Yom Seong-ha still looked bewildered, eyes wide, scratching his head. "If I used it this way, I'd drop to the level of the fifth wheel." Si-hoon was startled. "What?" Seong-ha spun 5 wheel rotations right before his eyes and explained. "I succeeded in completing the black fire wheel, but I lacked the stamina to maintain 6. Si-hoon still insisted that the black fire wheel is stronger than 7 ordinary fire wheels. He looked a little troubled, closed his eyes, then turned sharply. The Fire Blossom sect periodically sends instructors to test the skills of their air disciples operating outside. A massive black dark circle is created for fire mana to pass through. And if someone falls below the 6th wheel, they will be stripped of their air position. Si-hoon shrugged off the old-fashioned solution and said he'd do it the old way this time. Seong-ha, frustrated, formed a small circle in his palm, still not good enough. The black mana erupted powerfully from behind. The shadow wheel of my mana could no longer be controlled. Si-hoon was also getting a headache, frowning. When will that instructor arrive? Yom Seong-ha answered him immediately, "Tomorrow." He put a hand to his chin, eyes half closed as he looked elsewhere in thought. He had said losing the air position meant immediate expulsion, a method that could be enforced within a day. Suddenly, he slammed a hand down on Seong-ha's shoulder. "Hey you." Si-hoon looked excited and asked on the spot, "If my air position can be preserved by doing something, can you do it?" Seong-ha answered curtly and seriously, "I can." His gaze grew serious. "Very well." Si-hoon smiled, then produced with both hands a red-black stone and linked it to Yom Seong-ha, the highest-grade red resonance hatch stone, a type of ore where fire and shadow attributes coexist. The wavelengths produced by the two properties resonate with the user's innate power. "First, we'll change your weapon." Seong-ha then led him to see a high-end room. This is Akarquif's private training chamber. Only top-ranked members of the dojo's top 100 or the department's top 30 may use it. Si-hoon sighed as he entered. Such a show-off. He tapped the green screen. "You can change the interface here too, right? I'll tweak it a bit." The two stood still and watched as the interface transformed before them. Si-hoon pointed and teased Seong-ha. "Flower Fire sect, you miss home that much?" Calmly he explained. "My master sent it to me, so I only use it occasionally." He took out the hatch stone in his hand and looked at it excitedly. "Then let's start crafting the training implement." With a single light flick, the hatch stone cracked cleanly in two. The highest grade red resonance hatch stone, a type of ore where fire and shadow mana coexist. The wavelengths from these two attributes resonate with innate mana. A long pointed weapon was completed. Done. Seong-ha took the 2 spears, inspecting them with some concern. He was awkward with 1 spear, let alone handling 2. Si-hoon, however, remained calm. This is more suitable for controlling 2 mana attributes. Si-hoon, facing him without flinching, pointed and instructed. "From now on, create a fire wheel with your left hand and release shadow mana with your right." Surprised, he asked if he just needed to release it. "Yes, I confirm that's right." Seong-ha closed his eyes to steady himself. His gaze sharpened. He spun the 2 spears in front and behind him in a circle. Seong-ha suddenly stopped when he realized the spears were emanating mana. He didn't understand and stared up at the spear. What was that just now? Sihun calmly pointed and explained, "You accidentally let the shadow mana spill into your left hand." He felt the mana radiating from the spear. Different attribute mana mixing and leaking out is natural, but in his case it was chaotic to the point of self-suppression, probably because he'd been repressing his shadow mana all this time. Sihun fitted a ring onto his wrist. If you can manage to get used to both mana types at once, reaching the sixth wheel will come quickly. Wear this while you train. Seong-ha looked at the wrist ring and smiled. You have good gear, huh? Then he practiced continuously with the spears in various stances. 3 hours of training passed. Sihun stood outside watching, smiling with satisfaction at the progress. He adapted quickly. Perhaps because this training method was devised by his own future self. Feel through every cell of his body, with the surrounding mana to see how skilled his past version really was. Breathing rhythm moves the muscles, the shift of weight. Waves of mana flow through the body and project out from the spear tip. Sihun noticed his gaze and grew curious. What are you staring at? Sihun propped his hands under his chin, looking innocent. What, I'm just collecting data. He rested a moment, wiping his cheek with his hand, then suddenly paused. I need it to craft the weapon you'll use. Sihun sat casually in the chair. I'm making this to submit as an assignment, so don't expect too much. Seong-ha turned his face away. Who would expect a first-year's weapon to be any good? Sihun wouldn't sit still and cast a sidelong glance, while casually. Seong-ha swung the 2 spears hard from above to a flat strike. Is there any reason you must retain the air position? He didn't turn back and gave a brief answer. My master wants me to become the sect leader. He stood there with the spears hanging, his voice cold. So as a disciple, I simply follow his will. The one who adopted the orphan Yom Seong-ha and cared for him was an S-rank hero, and the first sect leader of the Fire Blossom sect. The photo on the wall clearly displayed that person's face and name, Yom Jin-hyun. As a child, he sat beside Seong-ha, patting his head and guiding him. Although he lost his strength after retiring due to injury, as a teacher and a father, he still held absolute influence over this guy. Sihun put his hands together, closed his eyes, and recalled their meeting. Get along with each other, link level 3, yes. Seong-ha dragged his pupils to the outer corners of his eyes and wanted to know why he was helping me. His brow furrowed, eyes narrowing as he thought. It was once again a bleak, desolate place spreading from the forest into the city. The 6 great demon domains, areas once swallowed by chaotic swamps, are now teeming with demonic beasts. Sihun sat with his legs dangling off the chair facing him. I plan to infiltrate all those demon domains. To do that, I need protectors and materials to craft weapons for them. He didn't hesitate to offer an ambitious design. If you become the next sect leader of the Fire Blossom sect, your skills and finances should be decent, right? Seeing that posture, he was left speechless. Practical indeed. Sihun grew serious and frowned. Of course, we haven't known each other long, so why would I do charity for you? What? Seong-ha tapped the spear against his shoulder, meaning that if he received help, he must pay a fair price. He glared and pointed a spear at him with a sharp look. Help me become the sect leader of the Fire Blossom sect, and then I'll follow you into those 6 great demon domains. The previous memory suddenly grew familiar, heard from Seong-ha's own mouth before. Craft me a weapon. Now I will slay the demon gods in your stead. A smile tugged at Sihun's lips. From his fingers he produced a brand new hatch stone. You won't regret this, will you? The stone between his palms surged with fierce mana. Now, whether you like it or not, I'll make you the sect leader. The red resonance hatch stone link imprint was activated. In the common training hall on the 1st floor of Flavium, Hyonan appeared formally with his attendants. It's been a while, young master. I am Gang Hyonan, the 7th-rank steward of the Fire Blossom sect. Seong-ha noticed the 3 people behind him. Who are those over there? Hyonan extended his hand to introduce them. They are disciples personally selected by the sect steward. The donor requested they be enlightened through a sparring match between me and the young master. He even covered his mouth deliberately and chuckled as he mentioned it. Because the young master is the most talented person after the successor sect leader. Seong-ha, however, was not pleased and warned him. Hey, Steward Gang Hyonan, his gaze turned icy and fixed on him. The next sect leader hasn't been decided yet. Watch your words. Hyonan still smiled conspicuously as if nothing was wrong. Ah, I sincerely apologize. Perhaps I was momentarily mistaken. Hyonan spread his arm and got serious about the matter. Shall we begin the competency test now? Seong-ha bluntly refused. No. A title appeared within a half-spiral. I petitioned to take the promotion test to reach 7th circle. Hyonan put on a disdainful look. A foolish person who only trains dares to dream of the sect leader's seat. He recalled the words of the one backing him and spoke arrogantly. If Yom Seong-ha wants to challenge Circle 7, then crush him completely. Whatever happens, I will arrange things favorably. Hyonan faced him and lectured at length. From rank 7 onward, the test includes direct combat with the steward. The young master should also consider Elder Yom Jin Hyun at headquarters. For you, this is still too soon, young master. Seong-ha stood there indifferent. You talk too much. Seong-ha even dared to stab at his pride, as if questioning whether he feared being stripped of his steward position. Hearing that, Hyonan flew into a rage and immediately summoned someone. Bring my spear here at once. This promotion to 7th Circle will be conducted in the form of a domain duel. He held the spear upright in his hand. The domain duel is actually very simple. It's a pure contest of strength. Whoever has the stronger fire wheel wins. To be promoted, you must win or at least draw. Seong-ha's eyes sharpened as he gripped the two blades. At the shout, he said, "All right, let's begin." At first sight of his weapons, Hyonan confidently covered his mouth and sneered. Using spears? How unimaginative. Seong-ha paid it no mind and, eyes fierce, lunged with the two spears empowered by raging fire mana. Hyonan still stood there reproachfully. Did you forget all the times you've been told to suppress your shadow attribute mana? Such chaotic flames will never be recognized as a fire wheel. Si-hoon smirked as he formed spinning rings of fire around himself. Let's see what happens when we really provoke it. Hyonan seemed very confident. He spun his spear in an arc behind him. You will surely regret this. He began to take a serious stance, rotating out rings of flame. Light from the fire attribute mixed with the shadow attribute and exploded outward. No one could be seen. His eyes suddenly widened at the sight of. The form of a black dragon pierced the rings of flame and began to devour them. What the hell is happening? Is my fire wheel being swallowed? Is it being torn apart completely? His crazed black eyes were stunned, and only a few seconds later, the spear in his hand shattered into 3 pieces. Hyonan collapsed to his knees on the ground before the ruined weapon. Seong-ha held the 2 spears arrogantly as he looked down at Hyonun's dismayed figure. You called it impractical. Si-hoon stood behind, watching with some regret. What will happen next? Such a waste of excellent materials. Seong-ha, holding the 2 spears, spoke to him. Once the promotion ceremony is held soon, I will be officially recognized as Yomwa's steward and the legitimate heir. Si-hoon lowered his head in curiosity. How could he sit in the sect leader's seat? Seong-ha, standing beside him, glanced over. 2 conditions must be met. First, reach the 8th circle, and second, obtain the consent of the majority of the other stewards. Si-hoon squatted near the ground and picked up fragments of the spear. Even if he reached the 8th circle, could he make them agree? Seong-ha immediately affirmed confidently. I can win that consent through competition, so that's not an issue. However, it wouldn't be a domain duel then, so it won't be as easy as today. He heard this, stood up and put his hands in his pockets. Then it probably won't take too long. Seong-ha stood beside him, gripping his spear seriously, and said, "Sounds a bit too easy." Si-hoon replied casually, "I say that because it seems completely feasible. Just look at today's result." "Why are you looking at me like that?" His gaze was blunt. "From now on, you'd better think about how you'll pay this price." Seong-ha closed his eyes and looked calm, a smile at the corner of his mouth as if willing to comply. "Tell me what you need to settle this, cash or materials, and I'll provide whatever I can." His voice dropped to a serious tone. "Moreover, I have another item I'd like to commission you to make." Si-hoon glanced at him, surprised. Another order so soon. Suddenly, Seong-ha tightened his grip on the weapon in his hand. "These are not bad quality, but I'm only borrowing one to submit to class." A calculating smile spread across his face. "If he can produce those in just a few short hours, I'm really curious how the next spear will be forged." Seong-ha slammed his fist into Si-hoon's shoulder. "Make me a weapon even easier to use." Si-hoon walked alongside him, put the spear down. "You almost skewered us. What did you just say?" The link score with Yom Seong-ha increased to level 2. As the bond strengthens, the relationship between the two becomes more solid. The current link with the target I am Khan is transactional. Each completed transaction with the target forms a link stone. The crystallization speed of the link stone accelerates during an ongoing transaction. There is no limit to the number of stones generated. Cut to a crowded audience with lights shining on the stage at the auction house. The host, looking urgent, waved his hand and announced, "Thank you all for patiently waiting. The regular auction of the Refinement Department's second-year class is about to begin." Si-hoon appeared in the audience row, surprised at how many people had come today. Erica beside him noticed his outfit. "You changed your style." He just crossed his arms and met her gaze. "Professor Kim In-cheol reminded me that outward appearance matters, so I've been more careful. Apparently being top of the class really sets you apart." In-cheol appeared calmly under the stage lights. "It's very difficult to publicly manage someone who is the center of attention." Si-hoon sat with his arms folded, a sly smile on his face as he watched. I'm quite curious about Michael's plan to seize control of the refinement department. Today's theme is iron swords. 36 items were submitted, and we'll add a special quality inspection step. As the host said, a white cloth was brought out. This fabric is seogium, woven from the melted fur of an S-rank white tiger. It's soft yet as durable as metal and resists cutting blows. Another man assisting seriously used a tool to strike the fabric hard, demonstrating that property. A loud ripping sound tore through the room, and the host pointed to the demonstration on the floor. As you can see, to increase lethality, we can easily spot items whose durability has been reduced. In this auction, we'll use seogium to weed out such defective items. A sword was the first item presented, and now the first sword introduced is the blue glaive by Apprentice Joseph's. The crowd began to murmur, "Oh, that looks interesting." They seem to have prepared everything very carefully. Erica narrowed her eyes at Si-hoon beside her. "Do you know why they're doing this?" He analyzed a ferocious white tiger with blue irises. Most people only know the white tiger's body is very sturdy, but its abilities are actually somewhat more complex. Its fur, flesh, and bones each possess completely different properties, especially its fur, which can mimic the sharpness of any metal weapon that touches it. So no matter how good a weapon is, it will gradually erode that item's durability. Erica placed a hand on it and thought seriously. Wouldn't that put the white light greatsword at a disadvantage, since swords that prioritize sharpness often have very low durability? Si-hoon propped his chin on his hand, eager-faced. Exactly. This is clearly an obvious trap aimed at me and Professor Kim In-cheol. But if the sword breaks here, the advisor professor's reputation will be seriously affected. That only happens if it wasn't crafted carefully. On stage, the host struck the auction gavel hard. The 25th sword sold for 4 million won. The final sword was brought out and the host began the introduction. And now finally, sword number 36, by first-year top student of the refinement department, Lee Si-hoon. The quality inspection for the white light greatsword will now commence. The moment the sharp blade struck the white cloth, a powerful force burst out. The man gripped the sword's hilt tightly and tightened his hold, but the sword suddenly flew out of his control. Michael, having witnessed that sight, froze, his face gone pale. Just now, the white light greatsword was still sharp, only the tip had been partially broken. What just happened?